You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
The Centresteer Podcast, a Land Rover podcast by Land Rover owners. Welcome to the Centresteer Podcast, the first Land Rover podcast on the planet. Centresteer is a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners. This is podcast number 81 for December 2019. Happy holidays, however and whenever you celebrate. I'm your host, John Costage. Joining me via Skype are Harold and Dixon. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey.
Good day.
And Dixon is hurtling over the highways and byways of North America at present, are you not, sir?
Again, heading northwards back to Canada from a weekend of Land Rovering down in New Jersey.
Excellent. Was it a good weekend of Land Rovering?
Yes, Christmas party at Mr. Smith's place. Bunch of people showed up, took apart the engine condo, took bulkheads off the ceiling. That's a whole nother story. It was a productive weekend. Much done in the barn.
Excellent.
Sounds like my kind of party.
Our guest this month is back for his annual tune-up, Jeff Aronson, editor of Rovers magazine. And stay around after we talk with Jeff for Roverkids. It is the holiday season. You can show off your support for the podcast with a sticker or a t-shirt. You can also become a regular podcast supporter through Patreon. All the details are on our webpage at centresteer.com. That's center spelled in the British way, C-E-N-T-R-E. We have a new way for you to show your love of the podcast. You can buy me a tea. There's a link from on our website. If you want to buy a drink for one of us in particular, put their name in the optional message field. And as always, thanks for your comments, likes, follows on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email. I don't think I missed anything there.
I like whiskey, so if anybody wants to buy me one of those, that'd be great.
Yeah, we should have a link for send Harold a whiskey. That'd be a good idea. Legal in one state. Oxford is home. The last Overland has completed its journey on Saturday, December 14th in the UK. It arrived back in England. There's a lot went on. I like this Alex Bescaby tweet. 19,000 kilometers, 23 countries, 2 continents, and 1 parking ticket. Thank you, City of Westminster, for the perfect end to the most weird and wonderful 4 months of my life. And thank you to everyone who came from all over to mark the end of the last Overland. It's been a riot. Now sleep.
Interesting that he gets a parking ticket, although I'm not surprised that he didn't mention any speeding tickets.
I don't think there were any.
They don't go fast.
It doesn't go fast.
But has it actually arrived in England? Because I understand it hasn't been exported and left Singapore yet.
You mean paperwork-wise? It physically is back in England.
Well, from a bureaucratic standpoint, I have to say the thing is obviously still in Singapore because the paperwork says it's there.
Well, apparently the vehicle is in Singapore, but all of its parts are now in England.
Ah.
Something happened there. What was it? There was a problem with the carnet or something, right?
I understand it wasn't surrendered because when they quickly left Singapore and so on. Some legerdemain has to be done now so Adam can get the deposit back that for the vehicle when it went into Singapore.
Apparently, from what I understand, Adam has won that argument, I think just yesterday. But yeah, it was a long protracted thing because some official in Singapore said that they cannot return the deposit on the carnet while the vehicle is still in Singapore, and according to their records, it's never left. And I think Adam, sent them tons and tons of pictures and eyewitness accounts of it in various countries on its trip back. And I think maybe eventually he buried them in enough evidence that they relented.
I mean, they have 19,000 kilometers of video, don't they? Isn't that enough?
Something like that. Should have shown him the parking ticket from England.
That would do it. Mm-hmm. There's an official document now in England saying it is there.
So it is back, of course, and they had a big arrival party yesterday, and there was a big turnout, and quite the thing. Somebody showed up with a big banner that they all signed and autographed and stuff, including Tim Slesser. The man himself was there to see the trip end. But what I thought was really interesting was that JLR sent a new Defender to the party, and that new Defender was painted in a 2-tone paint scheme. The bottom half was Oxford blue and the top half was Cambridge blue. And it had all sorts of lettering on the side, Oxford and Cambridge, Far East Expedition, and all that kind of stuff on it. It looked pretty cool.
It did.
Not the most attractive color combination in the world, but I thought it was a really neat tribute.
Absolutely. I thought they did a really nice job. It was nice to see that. Not to mention, they had also, last Overland had stopped at the Slovakia plant and took pictures with a new Defender as it was, being created.
I wonder if it's the one that Adam has ordered.
I don't think so. I recall Adam saying that they saw part of it going through, but he wasn't sure exactly which one was his. I don't think that was the case though. But he was
commenting about how he was glad he's got one on order already because he's pleased with it. And personally, I think that JLR should give him that two-tone blue one that was at the party.
There you go. Good idea.
I think it belongs with Oxford, and I think it would be a great way for JLR to say thank you to Adam for rescuing Oxford and doing all this good PR on their behalf.
Did you guys see any comment, pictures, anything about the drive into London? Was there a big convoy? I know they didn't want one, but I thought for sure it would have made some news at all of some sort.
I didn't see that. I did see a video of it being pushed onto the train that goes under the channel.
Right. I did see that. I think I saw a video of it being driven on the road, but the truck was by itself. Oxford was by itself. I thought that was in the UK. Then I watched a bunch of Instagram live stuff, and there were a lot of pictures. Looks like they ended up in London, I think at a hotel. And I think must have been maybe where it got its parking ticket. I'm just guessing here, and that's where I did see Tim Slesser was also at this reception.
Right. The picture you saw, what side of the road was it on?
Oh,
because that'll tell you whether it was in the UK or not.
Yeah, you're right. I want to say it was on the left-hand side. Good.
There you go.
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Because there's nowhere else between London and Singapore where they drive on the left.
Yeah. Right. Good call, Harold. Good call.
Maybe India. Are they driving a left in India?
No, I think they're right hand. Or I think, with all the respect to the Indians, I'm not sure there is.
They drive wherever they want to.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. At least gotcha. the things that I've seen on Top Gear and other shows. Yeah.
They drive wherever the cows are not.
Related to the last Overland, going back to the first Overland, Adam Bennett has published a book of the original first Overland expedition photos. Although Anthony Barrington Brown was the official expedition photographer, the other team members had their own cameras and they took their own photos. Many of these have never been published, and Adam, with the help of LRO photojournalist Peter Galilee, raided their archives, put together a 118-page spiral-bound book. The color pictures in particular are striking. To put them into a 1950s book was expensive, and the color processing of the day was, an issue. So few were ever included, but the original negatives have been given painstaking modern computer renovation, and Adam's been able to include a number of striking images. The book is available through Graham Aldis's website, which is teeafit.co.uk. Of course, a link in the show notes, and Graham has been on the show before, so if you would like a copy of that book, I've already ordered one. It's on its way, and I got all that text, by the way, from Graham, so thanks, Graham, for that text.
And mine is literally in my hand as we speak.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's well put together. And actually, you're right about some of the pictures from other people, but there's also some BB pictures in there as well, some stuff that he never used in the publications. Some of the stuff is from his personal collection, which of course would have passed to his son when he died. I've got to say, this is really nice of Adam to put this book together, and it really speaks to Adam's level of stewardship. Not enough just to own Oxford and to restore Oxford, but to keep the legacy and all of that stuff going by producing the book. I think that was really cool.
And it's actually reasonably priced, £20, which includes the shipping anywhere in the world. It's a well-done book.
Yeah, I think it was $25 American when I purchased mine.
I think I paid $27 with exchange, but nonetheless, it was an easy transaction. And Graham's a good guy. He put it in a padded mailer and sent it out the very next day, and I had it 8 days later.
If you're a first Overland, got to get my Overlands right. If you're first Overland aficionado, you want to see these color photos, head on over to Graham's site and pick yourself up a copy of the book.
While you're there, get a copy of the first Overland DVD if you don't have it, and the After Overland DVD, and get the whole collection from Graham because he's got lots of good stuff.
So welcome back to Oxford, back to the UK. And now, the news. JLR reports November retail sales. Generally, they had growth in China and North America. Sales were up 3.4% compared to November of 2018. They sold over 46,000 vehicles. Sales continue to improve in China. They were up 29% year on year. This month to last year's month, same month. That marked its 5th consecutive month of double-digit sales growth in the China area. North America sales were up 4.9%. It was the best November sales levels. Sales, though, in the UK were down almost 11%. Europe was down almost 17%. And overseas, or I guess ROW, was down almost 17%. They say largely Russia and MENA, which is what, the Middle East and North Africa?
I believe so, yes.
And specific sales numbers for the brand Land Rover for November 2019, they sold over 35,000 vehicles, which is up 5.5% year on year. Jaguar sold over 11,000 vehicles, which is down 23.1% year on year. Things have stabilized. Is that maybe a good word for it, for their business issues?
Or at least maybe they've managed to arrest the free fall in China.
Yes, that's probably a good way to look at that. Yeah, good way to look at that too, or at least hold. That's it for strictly business news for JLR. We have some model reviews coming up, but first, I thought this was relevant, interesting. Jaguar pulls the plug on the electric E-Type. So back in 2017, JLR Classic Works unveiled the E-Type Zero concept. It was based on the original E-Type Series 1.5 Roadster, and it was converted to a fully electric sports car, replacing the original E-Type Straight 6 with an electric drivetrain developed by Rimac, featuring a 40 kilowatt, yes, kWh, battery, providing 175-mile range and a 295 horsepower electric motor. Paul Hagerty, who's a manager for Range Rover Classics, ended up emailing the potential buyers and retrofitters, and he said that they are putting a pause on the development of the production vehicle for the time being.
Any rationale why they're doing that? Because my understanding was that this was going to potentially be a rather popular conversion.
Yes, you're right. It was a popular idea and popular conversion. They had a lot of customer interest. I believe it goes back to their sales and business problems. That's the impression I got from this Car Buzz article. One
of their cost-cutting austerity measures or something?
Yes. Yeah. Because, didn't they, last month they pulled an SV, Range Rover SV special one, and then don't forget they also eliminated or paused that Classic Works here in North America. So I think that's all part of that.
Okay, so they're retrenching a number of things for the time being. Okay, it makes sense.
I mean, they did say pause. At least in this one, it didn't say it was completely canceled, which was a good sign, I think.
Right, yeah, pause is always better than stop.
All right, some specific model reviews. So if you're interested in these models or want to hear about them, you can go out and check the articles in detail. I'll give you some what I think are highlights. The Range Rover Velar D81. You're already having problems with the names. Range Rover Velar D180. This is a 2019, and this is Auto Express out of the UK. Their verdict, and there's also some more detail I'll read you, but their verdict is avoid the most expensive trim levels, and the cheapest Velar in the range is certainly not without appeal. Regular motorway users could do far worse than pick its blend of comfortable ride, cruising refinement, and long-distance range. But for those who regularly drive around town, the petrol model is probably a better bet. They picked the entry-level Velar D180. It's a 2-liter Ingenium diesel motor, produces 178 brake horsepower, enough torque for respectable performance figures of 0 to 62 in almost 9 seconds, and a top speed of 120 miles an hour. I'm sorry, I always laugh when I hear any Land Rover going above three digits.
But this is a Range Rover, not a Land Rover.
Thank you for the clarification, good sir. Yes.
Even though it starts with Land Rover, it adds the Range Rover, so therefore that adds the third digit to the speed.
You get an 8-speed automatic gearbox, a standard, no manuals in the range, and 4-wheel drive. For this Land Rover, they're asking 45,000 pounds, rather ambitious 55,800 pounds if you choose the sportier R-Dynamic SE that they are testing in this specific article. The Ingenium motor has an audible twang with idling from cold, and truth be told, even when warmed up, the Velar has more of a conventional diesel chorus than we'd like. It's not helped by a gearbox that, while smooth, isn't all that snappy. It's particularly prone to delay when you come to a halt at a junction and want to make a quick exit. The Velar is a very refined cruiser with wind and engine noise well suppressed, and the engine more than polite when it's not being stressed. Even on our car's optional 21-inch wheels, there wasn't a great deal of road noise to speak of. And the Velar's cabin can't quite match a full-spec Range Rover for accommodation, of course, but there's much more space than in the baby Evoque. So that is the Range Rover Velar out of the UK. And then a 2019 Range Rover Sport PHEV from PC Mag. And the reason I brought this up because it's a review of the tech around electric vehicle. They have the right picture.
Hence its appearance in a computer mag. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then they just call it the Range Rover PHEV, and then they keep calling it a Range Rover, and only at the end do they call it a Range Rover Sport. And I go, oh, wait a minute, this is a Range Rover Sport.
At least they understand the difference between a Range Rover and a Land Rover.
Maybe.
Sort of.
I'm not too sure about that, Harold. I'll read the parts that relate to the tech. I think that's I think what we're here for. Like other luxury PHEV SUVs, the 2019 Range Rover HSE P400e has a limited electric-only range before its internal combustion engine kicks in to create a battery hybrid powertrain for better fuel economy. Unfortunately, while it has impressive on-road and off-road performance, a plush interior, innovative tech features, it also has rough transitions between powertrain modes, erratic electric range, a kludgy infotainment system, and it is one of the most expensive models in the category, making it difficult to recommend. The battery is charged either by a standard 120-volt cable, which makes about 14 hours for a full charge from empty, or at about 3 hours via a home 220-volt charger or commercial rapid charger. It's also incrementally charged via regenerative braking. What I'm not hearing there is the engine doesn't charge the batteries? Isn't that
I think it does. It's just they've just failed to mention that part of it.
Okay. Well, and isn't that what... So PHEV is partial hybrid electric vehicle?
Actually, technically, it's plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, which is a dumb name, but that's what they call it.
Okay, so it's a plug-in. So if it's plug-in, it may or may not charge from the engine directly?
Well, to truly be a PHEV, it needs to be able to charge from the internal combustion engine.
Okay. Yeah, they didn't really mention that here in the article. And towards the end here, our biggest gripe, especially compared with similar vehicles we've tested, is the harshness with which it changes power modes. The switch from electric or hybrid to gasoline power is physically and audibly noticeable to the point of being annoying. The HSE P400e has an electric-only mode for zero-emission cruising of approximately 22 miles. In EV mode, the gasoline engine is supposed to kick in when the battery reaches a certain power threshold, but the powertrain has a capricious mind of its own. During our testing, the HSE P400e would switch to hybrid mode even with plenty of electric range. The electric range was also inconsistent even on the same route and similar conditions. Sounded like they need to work on some of their computer control.
Well, it is British.
Although maybe that's why they're needing to partner
maybe
with
that's why
BMW.
PC Mag doesn't maybe that's why PC Mag doesn't understand it, because they don't know what British vehicles are like.
Conclusions. While the Range Rover HSE P400e is a mixed bag in terms of performance, fuel economy, and tech, it's the only PHEV the British brand offers. And in the rare world of luxury PHEV SUVs, it's a mouthful, the 2019 Range Rover Sport, first time they say that, PHEV is the rarest of all because you can't buy one yet. The model we drove is for media testing, but is identical to the 2020 model, set to roll into dealerships soon.
Still surprised at the lack of range of the vehicles when we're getting used to hearing, Tesla's going 300 miles and their Cybertruck will do even more than that in theory. And even the competitors are well higher than what Land Rover so far is offering in terms of range of these vehicles. I realize it's early for them, but still surprised at how short it is.
Well, I think you've got more drivetrain loss in the all-wheel drive versus a more conventional, like front-wheel drive electric vehicle. But I could be wrong about that. But I think also that Range Rover is just not putting as much battery in the vehicle as Tesla puts a lot of battery in their car, and that's why they get range.
That's true.
Tesla's whole point is the electric in the car, and that's its primary purpose. Whereas I think almost all other car manufacturers, they're being electric or partial electric, and they're doing something else, whether that is their capability, whatever their capability normally is. In this case, Range Rover, Land Rover, wanting to also go off road and be capable off road. I think this is also a result of their financial woes, with them now wanting to team up with another manufacturer on electric cars in particular to get that technology. I thought, I'm guessing here that they thought they had enough money and runway to do that themselves. And then when they got into financial trouble, they saw that they probably didn't, and then they needed to find a partner.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting to watch how it evolves.
Next is the 2020 Land Rover Velar. Wait a minute, I start again. The 2020 Range Rover Velar SVAutobiography Dynamic First Drive. This is from Roadshow. I like what they did here. I got to read you the very beginning of this. Chris Polkert. British autocrats love formal, long-winded titles. Prince Philip's actual full royal designation is no fewer than 133 words. So at 9 words, 24 syllables, and 65 characters, the 2020 Land Rover Range Rover Velar SVAutobiography Dynamic Edition's name is a terse snippet by comparison. I'm just so glad. I just love that opening line just because of that long name and putting it into comparison. For those who don't speak Land Rover, SVAutobiography means significant extra care, and fairy dust has been lavished upon this vehicle by the company's Special Vehicles Operations Department.
In other words, it costs more.
For this new Dynamic Edition model, however, the engineers at SVO have shoehorned JLR's time-honored 5-liter supercharged V8 under the Velar's aluminum clamshell hood, tuned to realize 550 horsepower, 502 pound-feet of torque. This steroidal SUV dispatches 0 to 60 in just you guys have to. I have to ask you. You got to guess. Any ideas? It's under 10 seconds.
4.2.
6 seconds.
4.3. Well done, Harold. 4.3 0 to 60, about the same time as a BMW i8 coupe. And get the
7/10 of a second slower than that Trackhawk we were talking about.
This is the best part. It'll push up to 170 miles per hour before an electronic limiter staunches the fuel flow.
So that's what you get before they decide you've had enough.
Yes, 170 miles per hour. That's when it's electronically limited. I let you know that is 3 digits, 100 miles more than you ever want to think about taking a Defender faster. Defender kind of maxes out at 70, maybe 100
Stock
more than that.
Defender maxes out in that neighborhood.
You can also spot the SV Autobiography's Dynamic Edition on the street by its standard Narvik black hood or its 21-inch wheels. In addition, there are unique lower body side sills, subtle knurling of the badging lettering, and a redesigned rear bumper featuring large quad exhaust finishers. According to the company officials, SVO spent some 63,000 hours developing this model. While it's probably fair to guess that that is a lot of it was simulator time, that still feels like a significant investment of resources for a small volume model, especially one that's only going to live for a single year. Land Rover only expects to sell 500 of these in total, as this is inexplicably a limited time beast.
I'm just thinking, I wonder how many of those 63,000 hours were spent on gratuitous test drives for the engineers.
The lead-footed, heavy-footed.
The Italian tune-ups.
That's it.
Because, if you were on that team, you would have to make sure you fully gathered that information.
One area where you won't lose any ground to Deutschland is in terms of cabin furnishings. The Velar's interior is flat out gorgeous, every bit as sleek as the vehicle's exterior. There's double-stitched leather everywhere, weighty knurled finish controls, unique gauge cluster graphics, and 4 different colorways. Regrettably, non-SVAutobiography Velars are offered in a larger range of upholstery, hues, and trims, but that sort of complexity is hard to justify in such a small volume offshoot.
But does it come with launch control?
I didn't see that. That wasn't listed here. That's a good question. Maybe it sounds like with dynamic in the name, you think it would have that. Maybe it does.
You'd think.
Then summing up here from CNET, from Roadshow, the Velar SV Autobiography Dynamic starts at $90,790 plus $1,025 in freight, with a handful of options like 22-inch wheels, $1,300, advanced driver assist pack, 360-degree surround camera, adaptive cruise with steering assist, high-speed emergency braking for $1,300.
To improve the 170 to 0 time?
That's to help you if there's a problem in the 0 to 170 mile per hour time. This is to get you back to zero, Harold.
That's what I'm saying, to improve the 170 to 0 time.
I misheard you. You're correct. This tester rang up at $96,570 American delivered, considering a base Velar starts at $56,300. That's one heck of a price within the same model range. It generally doesn't feel overpriced. It absolutely feels worth the money.
For that same money, you can go faster in the Jeep. Sorry to say it, but
there you go. But would you be cocooned in a cabin as nice?
At 180 miles an hour, the leather is a blur no matter what kind of box it's in.
Valid point. And I just want to say this name again. The 2020 Land Rover, Range Rover, Velar, SVAutobiography Dynamic Edition. And then the 2020 Land Rover Discovery Sport first review. This is Kelley Blue Book here in the U.S. And I haven't seen a Kelley Blue Book review in quite a while. I liked what they did. They have pros, cons, what's new, talk about like the interior, the exterior, how it compares to other vehicles, what model is right for you. So they break down the different models, different trim levels by what they have on them. So it's really good. But I'm just going to read the pros and cons if you're interested in a Disco Sport. That's probably worth checking out to see where that might lead you. Pros: class-leading off-road ability, stylish inside and out, tows more than most compact SUVs, and has an available third-row seat. Cons: third-row seat is tiny. So I guess they giveth and taketh away there.
Well, third-row seats typically aren't known for their roominess. So.
No, it's, yeah. I mean, it's basically if you have smaller kids, or maybe
children or friends you don't like.
Yes, or don't want to like and don't want them to come with you anymore in your vehicle.
Right.
You got to sit in the third row. Cons: continue with cons. Very little luggage space with the third row in use. Base engine isn't terribly energetic. Fuel economy trails most competitors. And then what's new this year? It has an all-new interior with richer trim and available digital instrument cluster. Step-up engine in the P290 gains a mild hybrid. And of course and now it also has clear sight ground view and clear sight rear view cameras. And then new Defender news. We have a confirmed, as much as I can see, launch date in India. So for our Indian listeners, you will be able to get a new Defender 110 first edition in June of 2020. And this will be, they're going to import Defenders directly as CBUs initially. And then in 2021, they plan to bring in CKD kits in India. And
I
then,
wonder if they'll be assembled by Tata.
Probably would make sense. Why would you have anybody else do it?
Well, I don't know whether I mean they could have them assembled by Tata in some of Tata's manufacturing. They probably have some spare capacity. I'm just thinking whether they do that or whether they set up a Land Rover subsidiary of its own to do it.
So that's the CKD is what, completely knocked down? That's the
Yes.
CKD. And then CBU, I'm guessing, is completely built up? I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah.
I wasn't sure they didn't define the term, and I couldn't find a proper definition for it. But if you're in India, that gives you some confirmed dates. I think it also informs the rest of the world. So if India is not high on the list of countries for sales for Land Rover, I'm just expecting that UK, China, and the US will probably get it before June, then, is my guess.
On the other hand, India does get a little bit of priority because the owner of the company lives there.
Valid point.
At least one would think they'd get some priority at that point.
Cars.com did a face-off between the 2020 Defender and the 2020 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. We're going to spend some time on this. I thought it was relevant and interesting, especially for here in North America, if you're thinking about the two. So they did a comparison. Now, admittedly, they've not been able to drive the new Defender. So this is all based on what they saw at the North American Auto Show.
So it's perhaps a tad lopsided because you can't actually drive the one.
Correct. Strangely, when Land Rover cited the new Defender's competitors at the SUV's American debut, the Wrangler wasn't among the dozen or so vehicles it listed. That makes no sense to me, given that they can be roughly the same price. They're both premium off-road SUVs, and both are available in 2- or 4-door models. They're also
and the Defender evolved from the Jeep.
They're also meant largely for the same mission, go anywhere in comfort and style, but how they go about getting you there differs considerably. After having a solid look at the new Defender in LA, the author of the article, who is Aaron Brogman, decided to match it up with the latest Wrangler to see how it compares on paper. So first up, off-road equipment. Both SUVs have locking differentials. Both have 2-speed transfer case with low range. Both have off-road suspension, the Land Rover's being a standard adjustable air suspension. The big difference in how these two models go about their wheeling is in theory of what SUVs know how to do versus what the driver knows how to do. In the Land Rover, everything's electronic, from locking the center or center and rear differentials to selecting new ride height. It's all about selecting the right terrain on the terrain response system. The Wrangler does it differently, expecting the driver to know what they're doing off-road, and it provides them with a system to manually switch on and off-road in order to accomplish their goal. The Wrangler has a fixed height suspension, but the Rubicon, which is a model or trim level, adds an electronic locking front differential. So they say that the off-road equipment on paper is a tie between the two models.
Okay.
Off-road chops, listed off-road chops. On paper, the Wrangler can approach and climb a steeper hill, but the higher ride height and shorter rear overhang of the Defender give it an edge in cresting an obstacle and descending the other side. The Defender can transverse 35.4 inches of water, while the Wrangler manages to cross 30 inches max. The Wrangler does offer a few things the Defender does not. Manual transmission for one, but that's more of a matter of personal preference and what you prefer off-road. The Wrangler also has removable doors, fold-down windshield, and a completely removable roof, either as a soft top, 3-piece hard top, or combination of the two. So they also say listed off-road chops are a tie. Perspective passenger comfort. While the Wrangler JL has made some big strides in this regard for its latest iteration, it is still a quirky, trucky setup. It's narrow, it's tall, and its back seat isn't exactly what one would call spacious or blessed with plentiful legroom. The Defender comes from a luxury brand, and the Defender front and rear seats are much more comfortable, and the back seats are has surprising leg room in the 110 model.
So weird to hear a Defender get the win on interior comfort.
Indeed, that's exactly what they did. I like the line here. The Defender comes from a luxury brand. That's, I think those of us, that follow this for a long time don't think that, but I think the average consumer here in North America, that's where Land Rover is.
Well, and we had this discussion with Jeff a couple of years ago about the difference between luxury and premium. And Land Rover always was a premium brand, but luxury is still, I think, kind of new to them.
Power towing specs. And of course, there's things I'm skipping, so if you want more details, go out and check the article. But under power towing specs, the new Defender will sprint from 0 to 60 in 7.7 seconds for the 4-cylinder, just above 5.8 seconds in the 6-cylinder. While the Wrangler isn't the rocket that the Defender apparently is with the optional 6-cylinder, we have to give the Wrangler some props for offering a super torquey diesel engine. But that diesel doesn't help if you want to tow a trailer or a camper to an off-road site. The Defender lets you drag a far heavier one up to 8,200 pounds, regardless of powertrain or wheelbase, versus the Wrangler's maximum of 3,500 pounds for the 4-door, 2,500 pounds for the 2-door. So advantage Defender.
Also weird to hear a Defender win the drag race competition.
Yeah, by an extreme amount too. It's not like, they can tow an extra 750 pounds. This is like, what is that, 5,000 pounds difference?
Well, and I think
versus 330, 5,000 more.
And I think part of it also is that the Wrangler really is sort of a bottom end vehicle for Jeep. It's not, whereas the Defender is premium, and they build it with the same kind of capabilities and underpinnings as their upscale models, if you will. I mean, everything in Land Rover is upscale these days, but the Wrangler is still kind of a no frills. So no real surprise, I guess, that they've.
Well, you've led us nicely, Harold, into the value category.
I mean, it's not like they did a side-by-side of the Defender versus the Grand Cherokee Trackhawk, for instance.
So value, here's where it gets interesting. The lowest price of entry for the Wrangler 4-door, the one they sell far more of, is $33,000 for a 2020 sport model with no options. You still get a lot of ability in this vehicle, however, as it's a formidable off-roader even in base form. The least expensive Defender 110 is almost $51,000, but includes all the electronic terrain response, air suspension, advanced multimedia system, host of other luxury truck goodies. It's far pricier, but far better equipped. Yet, when you start looking at a loaded Wrangler Rubicon models with prices topping $60,000, the comparisons get harder. At $60,000, the Defender still has considerably more content and potential for refinement than the Wrangler and all of the aforementioned abilities. Based on the high-spec to high-spec trims, the winner in this category is Defender. The Trailhawk, where does that fit with the Rubicon?
Well, it's not a Wrangler. That's based on the Grand Cherokee. The which is, I mean, we did this I think a year or more ago. I did a comparison of the Trackhawk, actually, which is more than the Trailhawk. It's one step above relative to like the Autobiography Range Rovers. You know, the real hot rodded Range Rover versus the Trackhawk, which was cheaper and, oh my God, faster. That's the one that has the Hellcat engine in it.
Okay.
And it comes with launch mode, and it does 11-second quarter miles, and tops out at ludicrous speeds that Land Rovers have no business even thinking about.
Triple digits?
Yes.
Well, it's...
whereas the first digit is almost not still a 1.
Yeah.
For a 5,000-pound brick, oh yeah.
Would that be better to compare that to the Defender Works V8?
There is no comparison.
Okay.
Trust me.
That's at least a cars.com comparison between the new Defender and the 2020, get to the top of the article, Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. There's a short video, but I think it made the rounds. It was really cool. There's a French magazine called Largus. They got Mike Cross, who's the chief engineer at JLR, behind the wheel of a Defender 110, and they actually got it airborne, which was really cool. Really, really cool. The Defender in question was a 110 model P400. It was powered by a 3-liter turbocharged inline 6 with a 48-volt mild hybrid system, 395 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. And so if you want to see it get some air...
So that's the high-end 110 then, isn't it?
I believe that is correct. That's the V6. Yes, that's the V6. Correct. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's an inline 6, not a V6. It's an inline 6. So if you want to see a Defender get airborne and do some rally stage kind of testing, or doing a little bit of drifting in rocks and gravel, check out the video. I think it's like 2 minutes and 45 seconds, I think. So we'll have a link, of course, in the show notes for that. In addition to having seen it jump in the new Bond film, too, that they had that picture of. And then in new Defender news, there's not only is the new Defender coming out, but they're already talking about what's coming after that in the Defender family or Defender range. So Land Rover, this is from Autocar out of the UK. Land Rover is preparing to extend its model lineup in 2 bold directions over the next 5 years. The first will bring back the long-discussed entry-level Land Rover into the company's cycle, and the second is a new, more sporting luxury version of the new Defender. With an expected target price of around £25,000, the new entry-level 5-door model will be cheaper in real terms than any previous Land Rover model, believed to be codenamed L860. I think the new Defender is L660. It is expected to arrive in 2021. Meanwhile, the luxurious 4th model in the Defender lineup is said to be a full 4 years away from being unveiled. It is expected to make its debut as a pure electric model with sharper and leaner styling, as well as a highly luxurious interior, and price well into the 6 figures.
I was hoping for a new Defender Works V8.
That would be cool. Now that would probably be worth the price of admission there.
Especially if you put a good V8 in it and turned it up.
Yeah, I'm afraid that might happen on a very limited basis, but I think that's
well, the Works V8 was limited also. So I mean, just if you want to do a high end Halo, that would be the thing to do, I would think.
In this article, specifically about what we're calling, I guess, the baby Defender, another solid business reason for the entry-level Land Rover is that the market for mid-sized SUVs across Europe is healthy and growing, with a current annual market of over 500,000 units. However, some reports suggest that the car will also be sold in markets outside of Europe. The US and China are starting to embrace smaller SUV-style models. The company's need for such a car also has been hastened by incoming EU CO2 regulations and the requirements for the firm to hit an average of 130 grams per kilometer of CO2 by 2021, ahead of another big cut in 2025. Today's Discovery Sport is priced from £31,000 in real terms, as was the Freelander 2 when it was released in 2006, with a mooted? That's an MOT'd, I think is what they meant to say there.
Yeah.
With an MOT $25,000 entry price for the new car, it means Land Rover must engineer in significant cost savings. The biggest part of the price calculation will be the type of platform underpinnings, the L860. It's expected to see a new platform that Land Rover calls the D10, and parent firm Tata dubs the Omega Arc for optimal, modular, efficient, global, advanced architecture.
They just love to come up with new platforms and new names for their platforms, don't they?
And then take the platform and change it again and modify it. And meanwhile, the planned range-topping Defender Sport is in its early stages of its development. According to insiders, it's expected to be the first pure electric Defender family spin-off and is based on the new MLA architecture. It will be much more luxurious interpretation of the new model, with the kind of fixtures and fittings to rival the new Aston Martin DBX and the entry-level versions of the Bentley Bentayga, as well as being pure electric. One bonus is that it's thought, thanks to the ultra-fine controllability of electric motors, the Defender Sport will still be an exceptionally capable off-road as Land Rover's current crop of models. However, it will be significantly more road-focused than the standard Defender. So take that information with what you will. It sounds like there's maybe a baby Land Rover, which may or may not be a Defender, and then there's going to be a Defender Sport, which instead of all the other sports being below the main vehicle in the family, looks like it might be above.
Yeah, they're doing it backward.
That'll confuse the customer base.
Who are not already not confused.
Yeah, I was going to say
about names. Yeah.
Land Rover doesn't need any help confusing the public about their nomenclature.
No, some of their names get quite interesting.
That's new Defender news, so we'll move on to general information. So in the UK, thieves strip a mother of two 60,000-pound Land Rover Defender of doors, bonnet, headlights, and even ceiling fabric. She had parked at a railway station. She returned 11 hours later. Thieves stripped out the inside of the car, including doors, bonnet, and headlights. The bonnet, the hood, as we call it here in the U.S., completely took the hood, completely took the two doors off. And they say they said doors. I think I include the rear door. It looks like a Defender 90 or a 110 with only two doors on the side. The images show three of the doors missing, the back door wrenched off, the bonnet gone, windows smashed, and the interior trashed. Yeah. Anyway.
But the bonnet takes 10 seconds to remove, and it takes no tools.
And the same with the doors, right? You just need
doors a minute if you got the right tools.
Yep.
A minute apiece.
I think I read in here they were there for they had some video. They believe they might have been there for up to an hour and a half. So
they either didn't know what they're doing, or they took their time, had some lunch, and a cup of tea.
Cup of tea, yes. Well, they didn't do that with the windows. It's unfortunate, but nice looking truck.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, if you're going to steal, don't ruin what you don't take. I mean, really, leave something for the next guy.
The owner believes she may have found her bonnet for sale on Facebook. A picture of the item, which matches the paint color of her car, is on sale for £350. The seller from North Yorkshire claims it came off my 2016 Defender. The police are, of course, investigating.
Is there such a thing as a 2016 Defender? I thought they stopped production in 2015.
16, I think, was the last model, wasn't it?
Oh, maybe it was a model year. All right.
Speaking of old classic Land Rover Defenders, Gear Patrol. I'm not going to read this article
Legacy Defenders.
The legacy. Oh, yes. Classic, legacy, old. The title is No One Should Buy a Classic Land Rover Defender. Here's why. And this is Will Sable Courtney from Gear Patrol. For him, it boils down to here's the thing: the old Land Rover Defender sucks. I mentioned this because it's good to see a comparison. We're all deep into Land Rover and Defenders, and we enjoy them and we like them, and we don't always see their faults. So if you wish to see their faults, a different perspective, here's a good article for you to read.
It's not about seeing their faults; it's about embracing their faults. I mean, yeah, they ain't perfect, but they're lovable anyway. Which,
interestingly, it's what he basically says at the end. He goes, "That said, I mean, I still want one," so he gets it. But if you're
so he's just trying to scare off people he might be competing with to get one.
Maybe that's it. I hadn't thought about that. Good point. He's trying to get the prices down and keep people from buying them here.
The arguments that he's going to use against the Defender are going to be easily applied to every other 4x4 that's out there, including series vehicles all the way back to the 80-inch. Don't buy one because there's something newer or whatever. Well, true, but it comes down to personal taste, and Defender's not that bad a vehicle, so people are going to buy them.
Well, and if he doesn't, that's fine. That's just more for the rest of us.
And then in vintage Jaguar news, more than 30 vintage Jaguars were found forgotten for decades in a greenhouse. A long, long time ago, some unnamed person realized that storing motorized precious metals in a barn would eventually be passé. This visionary hoarder decided instead to collect an assemblage of more than 30 vintage Jaguars in a greenhouse in Blue, England. To passers-by, it would look like someone was tending a crop of blue tarps. To us, thanks to Blue Garage, it looks not like a barn find, but rather the first greenhouse find. It took a week to get everything out, and the shop said the parts alone have taken up 12 storage racks with engines and gearboxes included. Most of the cars are E-types, many of those early and more elegant 1960 models. Ooh,
those are the ones that are worth money, too.
Yes.
The first saleable car has been listed, a left-hand drive 1960 XK150 3.8-liter drop-head coupe with matching numbers that was originally sent to New York. This is said to be the last XK150 the factory painted in a cream color and the fourth last XK150 ever built. Scraps of the red leather interior remain. The sand-colored top looks to be in the same condition. After 8 years in the greenhouse, Blue Garage charmingly describes the XK's previous digs as, quote, dry stored in the UK, unquote.
Depends on how you define dry, too.
The convertible comes with a heritage certificate and will cost £40,000 to trailer home.
I don't know, not too bad. Although I don't think the XK150, at least not the 3.8 liter, is really the most expensive XK out there either. It's certainly less desirable to me. I'm not a fan of the XK150 body style relative to the 120s and 140s. And unless you're talking a 150S that had the triple carbs and the 4.2, then you got something.
Yeah, there's some pictures out there if you can take a look at the article from Motoblog. They had been sitting for a while. Although some of the bodies, were they aluminum, Harold?
No.
They were all steel? Jaguar did steel?
Unless you're talking about competition versions.
At least some of the pictures here, the ones they've shown, they look to be in pretty decent shape for being in a hot box for years.
Well, I think the heat probably helped them.
Doesn't that usually generate humidity in a greenhouse?
Well, it depends on how often it thermal cycles, but the heat tends to keep things dry as long as it doesn't get cold.
There you go.
So I think you're going to have a lot more humidity in a barn than you are in a greenhouse. But I could be wrong about that. Of course, you have UV damage too, so that you got that to contend with.
Right. So I guess maybe the paint would probably be more affected than the bodies in this particular
instance. And the
instance.
leather and the soft top and all that stuff.
Greenhouse is being just used as a glass storage facility. Moisture and so on should be under relative control. If they're actually using the greenhouse as a greenhouse, you're going to have tremendous moisture problems in there.
Yeah, you're going to have stuff growing on the Jags, not just around them.
That's correct.
Yeah, a couple of the photos look to be from inside the greenhouse. There's minimal plants. Look, there's the odd tree and some. Although this looks like there's snow on the ground.
And that will give new meaning to the term Moss gearbox.
Yes.
Finally, in the news, new 007 vehicles on display at London Museum. Vehicles from the new James Bond film, No Time to Die, are being displayed as part of the Bond in Motion exhibition at the London Film Museum in Covent Garden, which the museum calls the largest official collection of original James Bond vehicles in the world. The vehicles newly displayed are an Aston Martin DB5 stunt replica with damage and bullet hits, an Aston Martin V8, a Land Rover Series 3, a Land Rover Defender 110, that's the new one, with some damage suffered during filming in Norway, a Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE, and a Royal Alloy GT 125 scooter. Special effects supervisor said that the discussions were being held with JLR to produce the first batch of 8 new Land Rover Defenders for the filming. So it looks like they may have gotten the first ones for the film may have come off the line.
There's a certain heritage to that too, because if I remember correctly, the DB5 was just entering production when Goldfinger came out.
That's correct.
And if I remember correctly, they actually had, I think one of the cars was actually a DB4 with some prototype stuff on it to make it look like a DB5.
Because usually for filming, you need more than one car because they usually get damaged or they use them as stunt cars. And they did
especially in a situation where we've actually got to show it getting damaged in the movie. That takes actually multiple attempts at the damage.
And there's a picture in this article of that Defender in the Bond film getting air also. So there's another picture of the new Defender, all 4 wheels off the pavement or ground.
Not actually that hard to do that, but okay.
Not something you would typically do in a classic heritage Land Rover. You don't go around getting air under all 4 tires.
Well, I mean, yeah, sometimes you do whether you want to or not, but it's something you're not something you're deliberately going to want to do in a brand new $75,000 truck.
Unless you're, in Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Getting paid to create the illusion, that's one thing. But...
So that's the news for December 2018. Been kind of a slow month, which is good. If there's, I hope in the next couple weeks during the holidays here, there will be less news too. And how about that?
May you have a less newsworthy holiday?
Commonwealth Classics is a direct importer of classic cars and trucks from Europe and South America. They're a registered Virginia dealership with a physical showroom just 45 minutes west of Washington, D.C. They specialize in importing and restoring different makes, models, and variants of vehicles not originally sold in the United States. Their vehicles are imported, titled, and available to you to test drive before you even buy them. For the Land Rover enthusiast looking for 2-door Range Rover Classic, a TDI-powered Discovery, or beautifully restored Defender, their showroom in Marshall, Virginia is a unique destination. Looking for something special? Maybe like a... wonder if they do Land Rover Velar SVAutobiography dynamic.
I'm sure they could once they're 25 years old.
Ah, good point. There we go. Well, no, that would be available here because they would meet current safety and emission. Probably available here. They could
Are you sure about that?
I'm not. Well, that's where they can help you to find that information out. They can also help you source, restore, and import special trucks that you've been looking for. So contact Commonwealth Classics for your next classic vehicle, which could be a future classic, right, Harold? Like the SV. I can't say it anymore. The SVAutobiography dynamic.
You've gone into the well one too many times.
Commonwealth Classics. Visit www.cwclassics.com. And now, welcome back to the show. One of our favorite people of all time, Jeff Aronson, editor, Rovers Magazine. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Harold, and thank you, Dixon Kenner.
And you are still on the island of Vinyl Haven in Maine.
I am.
Good.
I am still. Efforts to remove me from the island, a la Survivor, have fallen apart.
How's the heating situation? I know I think the last time we talked to you, it's been about a year. You were having some heating issues in the house. I assume that's been corrected.
Yes, those have been wondrously rectified. I have a nice new wood stove, windows and doors that remain shut in heavy winds. These are big changes in my life.
That's an upgrade.
Totally.
It has been about a year, and I think we've gotten into this rhythm now where we have you on in the show in December to talk about the year and how things have been going. We want to hear from you and what's been going on with you in the past year in Land Rover world. Of course, we want to hear what you think about the new Defender. I know you wrote about it in the latest magazine.
Well, we're going to hear that whether we want to or not. So,
well, I for one want to hear. How's that? So why don't we start there? Is the new Land Rover Defender?
Well, my initial thoughts are that emotionally I'm somewhat torn. as a person whose newest vehicle is a 1997 Discovery 1, but whose regular vehicles are Series 2As, an 88 and a 109, I'm torn because obviously the new Defender, as with any new automobile sold just about anywhere in the world, is a package of expected safety, comfort, connectivity, and drivability that would certainly defy either the Wilkes brothers when they first designed the very first Series 1. The new Defender has some of the stylish hallmarks of the Defender, particularly from the rear. So when you walk around the rear of the vehicle, you're baffled by the sort of LED inset tail lamps, but there is that familiar barrel roll over the rear of the vehicle. There's the rear door with the vertical opening and the spare tire, where a spare tire could be. Can't get one on the hood apparently any longer. At the same time, as you walk around the side of the car, there's a silhouette that works emotionally. And then I get to the front of the vehicle, and for my tastes, it's not a favorite. That being said, my tastes are not those that Land Rover needs to have for success, not just of this vehicle, but as an independent company. And I need to, if I can, John, I just need to step back to highlight this. Land Rover, in a competitive automotive market, particularly one that needs intensive capital for the power plants of the future, needs to have the kind of volume sales that generate adequate profits for their capital needs. Right now, Land Rover worldwide is over right around 500,000 plus, depending on which models we're counting, but counting all the Range Rover models and so on in all the markets. That's enough for now, but not enough as they look to the future if they're to remain an independent entity of Jaguar Land Rover. At least that's what all the automotive and banking experts say to Land Rover. The other dilemma that Land Rover faces is that as with the rest of the automotive industry in the US at the moment, is the fact that the price point for all automobiles is moving upwards at a pace that's faster than many consumers are happy with. And that's a real issue. Any edition of Automotive News will repeat that story of the resistance that dealers are reporting when the new prices come out on vehicles. So you have a need for volume because you need to generate profit per vehicle. You have a maximization, if you will, of what you can charge for a vehicle that you produce in volume. Obviously, the specialty vehicles, where pitched at a market where money is not important, can really define what they want. McLaren has no problems with vehicles approaching $1 million per car. But all of the manufacturers that have to deal in a general market have to be aware of the problem of price resistance. At the same time, the consumer of an automobile, the person who wants to own an automobile, has expectations far beyond what anyone from the Discovery 1 backwards would ever expect to have in a vehicle. It is extraordinary what vehicles are expected to do and what has to be built in and has to last in a vehicle. So right now, the connectivity, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to highway, vehicle to your devices, all has to be built in and has to be affordable along with everything else that's required to be on a vehicle these days. And they have to be done to standards that are different between Land Rover's 128 markets. So all of this, to me, is something that I, as an enthusiast, just have to recognize. I don't have to like it. I don't necessarily have to applaud the choices that are made. But for me to pretend that Land Rover can produce an affordable Defender without what I call bells and whistles, but what the various regulatory agencies call requirements, is nonsensical unless I am to buy an older vehicle and rebuild it, restore it. I still will have, however, a vehicle that does not meet contemporary safety issues. And for those with a family, for those looking at a Defender as their only vehicle, you can't pretend that you can have a inherently unsafe vehicle on the road. The new Defender, for example, clocks out at 130 miles an hour as its reported speed in its press material. I do not think that I've broken 65 in my 109, and in my 88, my 1966 88, I once hit 70 and felt that the world would come to an end if it went to 71. I maxed out the speedo. It was, however, downhill.
Oh, yes. So, with wind, no doubt. So and a Discovery pulling you down the hill with a tow strap. Yeah.
Were you on a trailer at the time?
Now that would have been funnier. That was a good call.
That's the best gas mileage I ever got.
Yes,
there,
that's
Harold.
right.
When it was being towed once. Yeah.
What an easy ride. It was very comfortable. There was
no wind noise.
No wind noise.
Quiet. Yes.
Still wet. Still got wet, but
yes,
yeah.
Still wet though. Yeah. With all of this in mind, I approached the new Defender with some dismay, but I approach most every new vehicle with dismay because I'm not certain that I want to be cocooned, sheltered, connected in that manner. However, I recognize fully Land Rover has a far bigger ambition than making me happy. That being said, it's clear that the Defender will technologically do everything off-road that we would ever want a Land Rover to do. And if you look at the spec sheets and dimensions that we put forward in the article in our holiday issue, you recognize that Land Rover is using the electronics that it has to build into the vehicle to their best use. So you now have an electronic locking differential standard. You can get a snorkel standard, optional, but from the factory. You can have the same torque that frankly, better torque than we've had in the various diesel versions of the 80s and 90s Defenders, or on the gas Defenders that we had in the US and Canada. Far more torque right from the get-go. You also have 8-speed transmissions. You have a connection between transmission, transfer case. There is still a 2-speed transfer case, and drivetrain that we've never had before. You could probably accomplish some of the same just by clever use of your foot and the feel of the vehicle and the right tires. But a lot of that goes by the board as a necessity with the new Defender. In speaking with the Land Rover engineers who were sent to the Los Angeles Auto Show back in November for the US launch of the Defender, they're particularly proud of the vehicle's capabilities. I had a sneak opportunity not to see one or experience one. They're still unavailable to the press at this time. But I happened to be in touch with an individual in the UK whom I discovered was a prototype test driver for the Defender and was running it around the Solihull jungle course, quote unquote, day in and day out to assure to themselves and hopefully to all of us as enthusiasts that the longevity and general durability of the Defender that we've all loved will be retained. And I point blank asked that question of an engineer whom I interviewed at the auto show. And he was adamant that the durability and longevity that we expect in a Defender is retained in the current model. When they designed it, they engineered it and determined which components would be built to what specifications. That was very much in their mind. So
on that point, Jeff, if I may interrupt you,
please.
Was there any discussion or talk about there's what, 86 computers or ECUs as part of this, and how much did they talk about repairability in the field with all the computers that are available, the ease of doing that or finding out what the problem is? Is there consideration given to that, or are they hoping that it's so durable that those problems will be minimal and they won't have to worry about it too much?
I think they're taking two approaches, John. One is that there's tremendous, I want to call it, duplication of capability built into the central computing units within the Defender. So, in other words, where in my Discovery 1, there are modules tucked everywhere that will disable a certain function, even if I want it to be enabled, and nothing can override it except replacing that ECU. That approach, and Land Rover is not the only manufacturer to do this, but that approach is being pushed aside in an effort to create the capability within the vehicle for repairing itself. So there is an override that can exist if a certain module doesn't work properly. The intent then is to also build what you and I and other enthusiasts might call a wiring harness, to make it something very different, something much more akin to the kind of connectivity that's built into solid devices like our phones and cameras, so that the vicissitudes of old wiring and bad grounds and poor connections, they don't exist anymore, because what we call a wiring harness just isn't what we expect it to be. So there are lots of advances there. They're very, very aware that within any of their markets, except perhaps in the UK itself, they simply have a relatively small number of dealers. And that means that you cannot alone pretend that everything can be repaired at a dealer a remote distance away from you. There are certainly software fixes that can now go over any cellular signal. So if you're somewhere near a cellular or Wi-Fi signal,
Over the air,
the over-the-air repairs can be accomplished. You could not build the vehicle to do what it is doing, which is a greater weighting depth than technically we were supposed to do with our old Defenders. Most of that, of course, was broken. And my hunch is that these official depths are those that the legal counsel has recommended rather than the engineers have built in. They know the vehicles are going to be used hard. They know they're going to be in challenging and difficult situations. And frankly, nothing could hurt them more than finding that these vehicles, in effect, can't go to the places where they've gone in the past. Of course, the proof will be in front of us. By and large, though, a lot of the field repairability we talk about with everything from our series trucks to the last of the Defenders was a repairability that was mandated by the fact that components failed and needed to be replaced on the field. If you can reduce the components and their failure rate, you obviously have fewer repairs that you have to worry about in the field. John, do you have a modern vehicle?
I have a 2013 Jetta.
Is it a diesel or a?
It is a 6-speed diesel, yes.
If you have
diesel.
to ask.
No, the reason I'm asking is, take a perfect example. If you have a petrol engine contemporary car, you're expected to look at a spark plug at about 100,000 miles.
Right. And not change any fluids, really. Many fluids aren't even changeable.
That's right. That is just a different way of looking at how you construct components than certainly I'm used to and that, frankly, I enjoy. But that being said, most people don't, and most people don't live on an island off the coast of Maine where they can screw around time to make that happen.
Right. Yep. It's a usability, capability, all kind of rolled together.
Let me step inside the Defender because this is where it truly feels Defender. Your feet are dry. There's real heat.
Oh my
There's
God.
real air conditioning, if that matters. But when you sit in the vehicle, the kind of appropriate seating so that you can see the edges of the vehicle, even though there are cameras to provide that for you, nonetheless, you can still see out front and see the front of the vehicle. If you're in the second row on either the 90 or 110, which, as we know, are no longer really 90 or 93 inches and 110 inches. They're longer now. If you're in that
102 and 119.
Yeah, there's still that stadium seating effect that's in the second row, and there is a real third row that adults can enter. It's seats 2, but you can get in it and you can get out of it. When all the things are folded down appropriately, you've got an awful lot of carrying room. The extra length is really a function of the necessity, again, in today's market, particularly the U.S. market, of having a 110 with a third row capability. That's just essential. You can't sell them easily. And I also learned that the front of the vehicle, whose look I'm not a big fan of, is partially that way because European regulations protect pedestrians far more than our regulations do. In fact, I'm not certain our regulations even acknowledge pedestrians. But the European ones actually dictate how, if you're going to strike a pedestrian, how you're supposed to elevate them up rather than run them over.
That's correct. Yeah, I don't think America doesn't deal with that too much, I don't think, in the regulations at all.
So as opposed to smashing them, you need to launch them into space.
Well, there's to roll over the vehicle.
Being that that you have a chance of not killing them as easily.
Right.
Now, all of that
as quickly.
Or as quickly. But all of that said, when I talked to the engineers, they explained to me just why the front bumper and why the unibody, the Minoka chassis, has to be constructed in a manner which it is in the front. That's to allow for deformation of the front in an accident. It's to allow for airbags. And of course, you have to have the side airbags now, knee airbags. So all of this has to be built into the vehicle.
What about the angry headlights?
Angry bird.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of the front end. The thing that really annoys me is I think those headlights look like they're angry. I thought a nice allusion to the original Defender would have been completely oval or completely circle, headlights.
Well, I think here, honestly, you can remember back when Jeep tried to move away from round headlamps. Jeep buyers weren't happy and eventually forced Jeep to go to round headlights again. Defender and Land Rover really wants to separate itself from Jeep. And again, this is an issue in the U.S. market particularly, less so elsewhere. Round headlights are seen as anachronistic in the rest of the world. We're the only part of the world where they're still here, and that's because of the fact that most Jeeps of the Wrangler type are sold in the U.S., not elsewhere. That, if they're going to distinguish themselves and not feel as though they have to compete with the Wrangler, then they've got to distinguish it. That's what the contemporary market looks for. I was at the LA Auto Show and I only saw one brand with a round headlight.
So you were at the LA Auto Show. You got to sit in it. I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yes. Let me go back. Right.
Well, a question about sitting inside. Were you able to determine rear visibility? You told us about front visibility. How are the blind spots? And
well, there were no blind spots from the mirrors that were on the vehicle. And you can, from the rear view mirror, see the rear of the vehicle, which is flat with very little overhang, just like in the front. But of course, the mirror can also show you the camera view of what's behind you and alongside you. That's a feature now, not just on Land Rover, but is a feature of most Land Rover models now. Furthermore, you can get as an option that clear hood view feature, which allows you to see, in effect, what's under your front wheels or at the crest of a hill, what's coming up over the crest of the hill. So all of that is on that center screen. And I just have to remind for listeners of your podcast who really grew up in automobiles in the 90s, the advent of connectivity and cameras, rear view cameras, for example, are routine. And this is who Land Rover wants to have as buyers of the vehicle. So you can't pretend not to have that kind of thing. and you can't rely on mirrors any longer. In effect, your regulations to sell the vehicle expect that you will have cameras and sensors that tell you when a vehicle is coming up on your blind side and when somebody is walking behind you.
I've actually retrofitted on my Defender one of those rear view mirrors that has the camera connected to the back. It's fantastic, especially if you've got something in the back, you can still see what's coming up behind you. It's
if you can define retrofitting as attaching with blue painter's tape, then yes, you have retrofitted such a thing.
It's in testing mode. We're doing testing, Harold. This is a big testing.
Okay.
Harold, if I'm correct, John's Defender is blue. Isn't that right, John?
It is Oxford blue, not painter's tape blue.
Well, if I mean, you can argue interior design all you wish, but it just may be, Harold, that you don't have John's sensitivity to color coordination.
I love it.
Meaning I actually understand colors.
As I said,
what we should do is take a photo of your retrofitting and send it off to Jerry McGovern or Amy Franchella, who is the chief interior designer.
I'll do that. That's a good idea. I'll do that. And it's amazing. The painter's tape is held up. I've only had to replace it once in the past 6 or 9 months that I've been testing. It is in testing. And the camera's there. It's up on the roof rack. And the roof rack admittedly is gray silver, and then there's painter's tape on there.
Actually, it's not a question of interior design, Jeff, because the painter's tape is exterior. The interior is finished out in dangling wire.
Oh,
yeah,
that's very au courant.
It
you
is.
may not be aware of that.
With the
okay, it's not the way I build my stuff, but
with the mirror that straps around the existing rear view mirror, it's actually pretty good.
Look, guys, inside there's lots of touches in the new Defender that work very well. Yes, it is carpeted, but the carpets are snapped in place. They unsnap, and beneath you is a fully rubberized floor, front and rear.
Oh, really?
And when the carpets come out, you take a hose because the sills are lowered and the floor height, similar to an original series truck, is above the sill. That means you can really hose it out.
Really?
So
that's the first we've heard.
Handy for the classic river crossings too in the series truck, where once you make it to the far bank, you open the doors and let the water out.
Well, the water in mine actually comes out before I even make it to the bank.
You've got the upgrade then.
But there are no drain plugs, correct, in the new one?
I could find none, but I wasn't able to disassemble the car to see. In an ideal world, Land Rover is assuming we won't need them.
Right.
As an aside to the event that Land Rover created around the launch of the Defender was to have a social gathering, and this is something I need to commend them on. They not only invited their dealer network in California and around the country to come.
This is the 4x4 festival?
Land Rover clubs.
I'm sorry, this is the 4x4 festival?
No, this is a different one. This was the night before the opening for the press of the Los Angeles Auto Show. Land Rover found an event space, brought in some engineers from the UK to speak to the media, and then at a couple of hours afterwards, opened it up as a social event, and they invited the Southern California Land Rover Club, the Northern California Land Rover Club, the Arizona Land Rover owners, all to attend if they could, and they did. So and furthermore, to add to it, you perhaps read of Land Rover's sponsorship of the U.S. Alpine Ski Team.
Yes.
If we mention that. That is going great guns, and there are 11 Land Rover ambassadors. These are folks who are receiving a Land Rover. They're on the Alpine team, the snowboard team, the freestyle team, and a retired superstar, Lindsey Vonn. So several of them were at this event talking about their experience with their Land Rovers briefly, being introduced and sent off with good wishes. But in addition, the singer John Mayer put in an appearance, and Mayer performed a few numbers. He is a Defender owner. His Defender 90, it's a 97 station wagon, was outside the event space along with some other older Defenders and some other Land Rover models. And the neat part was that he gets up and after singing a song, but before his next one, starts to riff on owning a Defender very knowingly. So he is enthralled with the new one because he said, imagine a Defender that doesn't leak. And the crowd starts to giggle. And then imagine a Defender in which you stay warm, and the crowd roars. And then similarly, imagine one in which you stay comfortably cool in hot weather. He knows the beauty, the great spirit, and also the frankly shortcomings of trying to run an 80s or 90s Defender as your only vehicle. And it received quite a bit of applause from the enthusiast crowd that was there and from a lot of JLR people who were there. They took it all in great stride.
Actually, one of his songs features that truck. He has it in the video.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
And it looked very good, I might add. It's an Arles blue station wagon.
Very much.
The other feature, I guess, that was really struck me at the event was you're going to have a choice of a 4-cylinder twin turbo or a straight 6. But Land Rover knows that just like the hybrid models are now in the Range Rover and Discovery lineup, they have to have the same eventually in the Defender. We may not see it immediately here, but we will see it. As to whether we'll see a diesel Defender in the U.S., well, the dilemma there is that diesels aren't selling that well in other markets. And it seems as though the diesel may be bypassed for the Defender because it probably has to go to a hybrid and or electric in the rather near future in order to meet EU regulations. And saleability. I mean, China's going to be another important market for this. The U.S. market is expected to take some 20,000 Defenders once they get them in production. That's up from 1,500 a year. It's fully intended that you could have a Defender 90 or a 110 as your only vehicle. And you would not compromise safety or your off-road adventuring by doing so.
I can't imagine owning just one, though. I don't understand that.
You can buy two, Harold. They'll be okay with it.
They're like, Land Rovers are like potato chips. You can't have just one.
Was there any talk
I mean, look at Jeff. He's got 3.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And at the moment, one has brakes that require that famous Land Rover 2-step in order to get the brakes to actually actuate.
The solo hull 2-step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, solo hull 2-step. Yeah. And the other one, I just need to get the water out of it. The Discovery one continues to just sort of rumble along. She's doing all right.
Well, not according to the latest episode or the latest edition of Rovers magazine. You had some trouble. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Any discussion of the commercial version? It seems it was a big hit, and then since the new Defender was revealed, there seems to be more talk maybe that the commercial version might come to the U.S.
So here's the challenge of the commercial version for the U.S. market. Certainly it has an appeal to enthusiasts, but the dilemma is that the United States still enacts and imposes a tariff on every imported truck, which is why Toyota and Nissan make trucks in the U.S.
It's like 25%.
Chicken tax.
Yeah, it's 25%.
Still in existence. So the issue is not, might we see one? It's might there be possible to bring in an affordable one? And again, you might be able to strip it of some of the seating issues, but you can't strip it of its safety factors. You can't strip it of its connectivity factors, or it can't be sold in the U.S.
Yeah, I think that tax is like 25%. It's pretty hefty.
25% still.
It's ridiculous. Yep. That's why Subaru put those ridiculous jump seats in the back of their pickup trucks back in the 70s.
Oh, the Subaru Brat.
Yep.
Well, there we go. Just they use that third row seating in the back of the commercial one, and then you can call it something else.
The 90 will come only as a 5-seater. We won't get that third row option. It just isn't the space for it.
Right.
The 90 looks great. The 110s are coming first, and I'm going to guess that's because that's where they feel the initial sales market will be. And the 90 will follow.
Is there a delivery date for North America or the US and Canada? Because we've heard it looks like India's supposed to get it in June. I'm expecting the US to get it probably in the first quarter. I don't know if there was a date announced yet.
There's no date announced. I keep hearing spring of 2020 is when, and the dealers are already taking orders.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you can order one on the debut day. You could order one. And
I'm sure they'd be happy to sell you one and take your money.
They will be happy to take your deposit. They will be happy to have you order one so they know what they're putting together. Right. John and Harold, one of the issues, though, that Land Rover has for the U.S. market is one confronted by every manufacturer in the U.S., except maybe Porsche or somebody of that specialty ilk. Americans don't like to wait for cars. And while Land Rover enthusiasts and customers have been patient, you fully expect that you're going to order a car and you're going to wait. That's not the norm if you're trying to pull in other people than just Land Rover enthusiasts to buy a Defender.
Right. Land Rover people who are true Land Rover people understand patience. But, drive a series truck, you learn what patience is in a hurry. But if you're trying to bring in non-Rover people, you can't teach them patience at the same time.
Well, and that's not your experience in getting a vehicle. Your experience in getting a competing vehicle to the Defender is that you go to a dealer and you see a variety of colors or options, and the dealer knows which of his or her competing dealers have one that they might trade if that's the one you really want. You cannot do that in Range Rover lineup, certainly. And the dealer network in the U.S. has been urging Land Rover to say, if you really want to sell vehicles in the U.S. and you expect us to do this for you in some kind of volume as opposed to a bespoke vehicle, we need to have the vehicles on hand. People expect to walk off with financing in a vehicle or leasing a vehicle.
You need inventory.
You need inventory. So a part of this is to get the inventory up. If we think of the fact that outside of the listeners to your podcast here and outside perhaps of readers of Rovers magazine, for a lot of people, the Defender is simply unknown. You might recognize one if you see it on the street, but it's absent from the mindset of people when they think of what vehicle might they buy. So Land Rover has a major effort in front of them in reintroducing a vehicle that hasn't been available in the U.S. for 22 years. And
it also informs the point you've been making for years, is that Land Rover is still a niche manufacturer of vehicles. They're American. They're what, 0.1% of the American market, still are, right?
Yeah.
They basically were making as many vehicles as they could, and now they're trying to step up their game, and this is where we are.
This is where we are, and this is the vehicle that they feel will help them do that, not just in this market, but they do feel that there's quite a niche to be filled, and that they should be able to sell a goodly number of Defenders, far more than they have thought of in the past. The largest Defender production, I think, ever was somewhere near 45,000. That's worldwide.
And if they sell 20,000 here, just in the U.S., that's a big step up.
That's a big step up. And they're thinking possibly that the Defender can help them get volume between 60 and 80,000 worldwide over time. That would allow Land Rover to obviously make a profit per vehicle that provides them with the capitalization needed for new models. I'm sure you've all heard the rumor already of yet a smaller Land Rover, a Defender coming in of some sort, or being produced in order to capture that small SUV market that we last had with the LR2. This all requires capital from an independent company like Jaguar Land Rover, whose corporate parent, Tata, has been generous. But there are limits as to what it can provide for just that one entity, even as important as it is to Tata's profitability.
Well, plus you have the changing market, and you, in the sense that we're moving away from ICE engines and moving over to electric, and they are certainly, because of their financial problems the last year or so, they're getting caught short-footed. And this is all coming together, isn't it not? Basically, they need cash flow.
It's the big picture that can be hard for us as enthusiasts to recognize and accept. I mean, we would ask the question, well, why don't you simply put a little production line together and screw together, bolt together Defenders like you did in the past? Well, the reality is that you can't sell them in this market. And Land Rover really wants to produce right now 2 platforms on the Defender model lineup that are available worldwide. So they can get away from having to custom produce a vehicle to meet certain regulations and specifications. It works to their advantage as a manufacturer to do that.
They also can't afford to build them in any kind of volume the way they were doing them before. They're way too labor intensive, and you can't afford to do that in today's world.
And justify the rest of it that goes. So again, it's not just the building cost, if you will, but it means that you need a larger parts inventory because you're selling, in effect, vehicles that are assembled by hand that way. You also need to meet whatever regulations are around. So, for example, the Defender box frame simply won't allow you to have the pedestrian safety required to sell in the EU market. It doesn't allow it. You can't produce as heavy a vehicle as you once did because our fuel economy standards, not just here, but elsewhere in the world, are changing. And, folks playing with this like Bollinger and is it the Grenadier? Is that what the fellow in England is calling it?
Grenadier.
Yeah.
Or even the G-Wagon. I don't have $100,000 to spend on a boxy vehicle, even if it does meet all regulations. The Bollinger is actually coming in as a Class 3 truck, so it avoids some regulation.
Which is what I like about it.
Well,
but that's me. But that's me, and I'm a limited market.
Truck. Yeah, but it's going to be a very limited market, and it isn't going to be a particularly volume-oriented market.
Right, and that's the key. You can build this stuff if you want, but it's going to be limited production, and you have to be able to justify the cost on that. And if you're looking at a vehicle to increase your overall volume, you can't do it that way.
Right. I mean, that at least is certainly the contemporary thinking about it. It will be interesting to see for us as enthusiasts whether our own expectations change. I'm very eager to see what the first folks who take some of these round the world or across Europe or transcontinental adventures do in a new Defender. I'm very interested in seeing what their experience is like. It will clearly be more comfortable than anything that Land Rover's provided before for that type of thing.
Well, that's not that hard to do.
Well, that's the point, really. All these other things that we talk about, car manufacturing over the last 20, 30 years has progressed and has changed, and everybody has changed with it. Defender needed to, and you needed to do that and move up and be comfortable, whatever that means, different things, I realize, but basically be comfortable and drivable. All the things that we joke about are the things that had to change, and they now have. And
the ability to drive for more than 3 hours without having to go to the chiropractor, for instance.
Exactly. And that's the whole, the enthusiasts, we understood that. We deal with it. It's the people who are not enthusiasts, and that's a reason why Defender didn't sell, because those people didn't want those kind of cars anymore, didn't want those kind of vehicles anymore, so it stopped selling. And and then leaving the enthusiast market, which dealt with it. And all the enthusiast people, and I realize I'm on my rant here, all the enthusiast people, every one of them, Defender is, almost every one of them is not their primary vehicle. I have a Jetta. Harold has a BMW. What do you have? That Mini?
Not anymore.
Oh, okay. And but you did.
I drive a Jetta as well. Hence, you're having one because you liked mine.
And Dixon's in his Audi.
Anyways, I'm only driving the Jetta to get access to that engine.
Right.
If it wasn't for the TDI, I would not own a Jetta.
Right.
Well,
So John, it's an important point. You can't really succeed by building niche vehicles only. I'm reminded constantly that 80% of the vehicles produced by Porsche are their sedans and SUVs. Brand fanaticism like Porsche has created, if they still need another 80% in order for them to remain an independent entity within a larger corporate world, Land Rover needs to do the same. And I'm thankful that there are models that I may not adore, that helped support the creation of the Defender. Right. And that being said, every one of them, even the Velar, every one of them off-road proves to be enormously capable. It's still being built that way. And that's a tribute to me to Land Rover. That's what Land Rover enthusiasm really has to recognize.
Well, and the other thing to look at philosophically, I guess you might say, is the tradition of it is that the original Land Rover was conceived primarily as a way to increase production volume of the company. So It kind of seems fitting that the new Defender would be conceived for that reason as well.
Right. And in the 1950s and 1960s, you could pretend that a Land Rover could be your only vehicle, could be a multi-purpose vehicle. Once the interstate highways came about in the U.S. and once the motorways, autoroutes, and autobahns came around in Europe and the highway system up in Canada, you couldn't pretend any longer that could be the only vehicle you would have and use routinely. It would
take a special kind of person to do that.
Yes, which is what I say to myself every morning when I climb into one of my series trucks. Yeah.
One of your affirmations in front of the mirror, I'm Jeff and I'm special.
I don't have to say I'm Jeff. It's just I'm special.
Okay. All right.
He already knows he's Jeff.
But he doesn't know he's special.
But I do affirm it every day. Exactly.
Okay.
So what I want to know, Jeff, is have you spec'd out a new Defender that, barring money, you would like to have?
Well, I'm still a single guy and tend to travel single, maybe with one other person. So I'm eyeballing the 90. I'm a fan of what the 90 would offer me. I have not spec'd one out yet. I'm waiting to see what the packaging of the 90 is compared to the 110. The 110 is kind of like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but to me, it's like me having my 109. There's a vast expanse of space and empty seating. I just don't have that many friends or people want to ride with me or things to carry.
Well, they say if you build it, they will come.
And I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, Harold. Remember, I have a station wagon 88, and the only time that I filled it was when I was the only vehicle that we could get to a bar in from when I was taking my wilderness EMT course. The 110 that was shown in Los Angeles there were two models. Both of them are their sort of premium. One is called the first edition model, and they are kitted out with most every option that anyone might get for a new Defender. And obviously their potential list prices reflect that. The starting price of the new Defender is $49,900. I think by the time you get your destination, you're up to about $51,000.
That's for the 110, right?
That's the 110, exactly. Okay. For my purposes, that is a lot. On the other hand, if I am competitively shopping a vehicle against genuine competitors, that is a very reasonable price point. I commend Land Rover for making that happen. In the inside of the car, I just want to just note there is a quality of finish that surprised me because of the high quality nature of it. But at no time is there anything inside there that makes me feel as though I can't still drag very snowy, wet, or muddy clothing into the vehicle, and that somehow it would be inappropriate in there. There's some visual cues that will strike every Defender owner with joy when they see what's inside the car. So I urge you we'll have lots of photos in the upcoming issue of Rovers magazine, the winter 2020 issue, of the interior layouts and a lot of commentary about the vehicle itself. So we'll also have a comparative specification tables that we've created so that we can see how it rests against the last of the Defenders that we had here in the U.S. And we're looking forward to putting together that issue because there's a lot of great information that we'll be able to have, including many of the interviews that we had with Land Rover officials. So very excited about that.
I mentioned this a bit ago, but there was the 4x4 festival coming up where they're going to have here in North America, I guess it's in California. Can you tell us anything more about that and how that came about?
I can, and you, all of your listeners can go right to a 4by4.com website where all the information available is constantly being updated as well. So Land Rover is doing a couple of things. One that I've mentioned, but I remind us, their activity with the U.S. ski team really is bringing Land Rover in front of far more sports enthusiasts than it ever has in the past. And I will have a feature on this. We are seeing from the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Association a tremendous positive response to Land Rover's participation in this. And you may have seen or will be seeing online, on television, on videos, a Play Harder campaign. And I recognize that for most of your listeners, I need to express that second word in an accent that would be comprehensible. Play Harder campaign.
Thanks for that clarification.
You're welcome. Yes,
he translated into English for a minute there.
So that campaign brings back the humor, the gentle self-deprecation that we all loved from the ad campaigns of the 90s for the Range and the late 80s, the Range Rover Classic, the early Defenders, the first Discovery ads. These were joys to see, but we didn't see very much of them. Land Rover's limited budget always precluded that. Land Rover took an important step of, if you will, convincing the U.S. Ski and Snowboard that Audi and Subaru should be set aside for the purpose of letting Land Rover be the sponsor of the Alpine ski team, to provide vehicles for members of all four of the World Cup and eventually Olympic competitions so snowboarding, freestyle, alpine skiing, cross-country skiing. And members of each of those teams have been selected between the two entities to become Land Rover ambassadors. Some of them have Land Rovers already. None have Defenders, but some have Land Rovers already. Here's something that I can share with your listeners, because it was given to me just in an interview with Land Rover last week and with the ski team members. Not only are they getting use of a Land Rover here for some specified period of time, but when they go and compete in Europe, whatever country they're competing in, Land Rover is providing them with a Land Rover to use while they're competing in that country. So
nice.
This is really, this is an extensive participation, and just something that Land Rover has not done outside of, say, eventing, and in Europe, of course, rugby in the past. So this is a big step forward. Concurrent with that, John, is the Best by Far Festival. And this is an intriguing public event being held over the Martin Luther King weekend in January in the Palm Springs, Coachella Valley area of California. It's the same site as the Coachella Festival. They are involving the same event teams that put together the food and lodging, etc., for that event. This is a 4-day event open to the public. Buy your tickets online, with music, with cooking, with adventure themes, as well as demonstration courses that will be set up for each of the Land Rover and Range Rover models, including the new Defender. So you'll be able to drive them with a Land Rover instructor, obviously on a design course. But it's a great way to introduce it to, again, people who are unfamiliar with Land Rover as a whole. By being a public event, not just one that's aimed at Land Rover enthusiasts, they hope to bring in folks in the largest automobile market in the U.S., which is California, to introduce them to the brand. So it's a great step forward. This is something that Land Rover in the U.S. hasn't done in a very long time, and the previous events have been in conjunction with specific and somewhat smaller groups. Eventing is important in the U.S., and certainly the Rolex events, the Rolex Land Rover event, now the Land Rover 3-day event in Lexington, Kentucky is very well attended, 30 to 50,000 people, depending on the weather. They're anticipating tens of thousands will be at this Coachella event.
Are you going?
I am hoping to go. Maine has a returnable container law so that I am saving my cans and bottles, and we're putting it all into a little tin cup, as they said in the musical, and I'm hoping there's enough there to get me out there. I'd very much like to do it.
The VIP tickets are left. 2-day VIP tickets are $350, and general admission 2-day is $185.
But you are getting, I mean, they're bringing in at least a half dozen different musical entertainers. So
I like the taglines or the description here on the website. 35 acres of lush playground to explore. Experience the all-new Land Rover Defender on a purpose-built off-road course. Mountain biking, yoga, climbing, fly fishing, survival skills, campsite mixology, and more. Hosted by Outside Magazine.
Hopefully not all those things are happening on the same track.
They're very excited about it. Again, it just signals that Land Rover wants to bring in the enthusiasts, make things available to folks, and also create new enthusiasts for the brand.
Right.
Which is what I'd love to see.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's the whole point. If you want to increase your volume, you've got to get new customers.
Yeah, and believe me, I will be thrilled. Right now, we send out about 25,000 copies per edition of Rovers magazine. I'd be happy to have the demand clamor for more.
Can you get in cahoots with JLR to make sure one's in the map pocket of every new Defender delivered?
I can certainly try. I don't know if they really want to buy those extra copies, though. That's what we would want them to do. Oh, it's certainly worth a shot. They are thrilled, I know, and I say that very respectfully. They were very pleased with our initial coverage of the Defender, just as we were pleased with all that it offered us as a magazine. I'm very eager to get in one. I certainly hope it can happen soon.
I have seen that Alpine team in a commercial here in the U.S.
Yes.
And I've seen that commercial. So it's starting at little penny drops now of what's happening there. They're using that. They're already putting them in ads. Which,
yes, they are. And they're very entertaining. It's a very entertaining campaign. It's very well done.
Quite a coup to displace Subaru on that gig.
It was a big, and it's just a major step. I mean, these things, as you know, are not inexpensive. So Land Rover is stepping up to the plate and, frankly, taking a gamble here that this will pay off in additional awareness of the brand, and also sales will follow so that it can support these kinds of activities. I believe that the Alpine is a 3-year commitment.
Well, as you said, they got to reintroduce the brand into the U.S. in particular, and this is a good way to do it and make a little splash. And we already know about it. They're not selling to us.
We are, and I have to remember that.
Yes.
So I think the festival will be great fun, and I certainly, and I know from some readers of the magazine already who've contacted me that they're planning on flying out just from the East Coast just to be there. They're very excited.
They're going to have some additional events happen, I believe, with John Mayer. Are they not going to go cross country, do several other events, I think, in conjunction with Outside Magazine?
I've not received press material about that yet, but I would anticipate that since he is a genuine enthusiast, as are the members of the Land Rover ambassadors on the ski team that we've talked to, I think they're going to really use them and enjoy the good feelings that their support brings.
So what other events are going on that we should know about, or you've been to, or you'd like to bring awareness to?
The next big event in the Northeast, anyway, is the Maine Winter Romp here in Maine, which is the President's Day weekend in February. And that is one of the more unique events, as it has no specific club or vendor support. The organizer, Bruce Fowler, avidly rejects it. It's free. You simply pay for your lodging. You are welcome to winter camp on his land if you prefer, and you pay for your food, and that's it. He provides land and trails. As an interesting comment, though, we should highlight that last year's Winter Romp was great entertainment, but the event was threatened a bit by the closure of land from landowners and the possibility that a block of land routinely used for trails was going to come up for sale. So several enthusiasts from Vermont, from New Jersey, in Maine itself, put together a campaign to provide the funds to buy the couple hundred acres or so, 100 plus acres for sure, I think there's more, that would assure access in the future to off-road trails. And that was successful, and that land has been purchased. I believe it's been closed on. I'm not certain about that.
It is, yes.
It is.
As I recall, that fundraiser only took like a week to get the money, too. It was quick.
Right. And when another parcel that is important for access to the land that was purchased came up, another enthusiast stepped forward to actually purchase that land. And then Bruce Fowler, in my most recent conversation with him last week, is talking about creating some kind of nonprofit or not-for-profit trust that will administer the property and make it available for multiple uses, but will assure that it doesn't become sort of somebody's vacation home spots in the future, and we still have access to that wonderful territory.
And I believe
sort of a private game preserve for Land Rovers, if you will.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. But without any of the, without any of the pretentiousness that sometimes goes with that.
And they cut 3 new trails this past weekend. I saw
yes, I've seen the posts also.
Saw a post about that.
The event is really an amazing experience. If folks haven't gone, it is highly entertaining. You never know what the weather's going to be. You never know what the trail conditions are going to be. You will, however, see Land Rovers outfitted or optioned or modified or totally stock that you've not seen before, and you will meet an extraordinary range of people from Canada down to Tennessee. We even had a couple of Texans show up last year. It's quite something. I for that alone, I recommend it highly. In general, John, I would like to commend the activities of many of the Land Rover clubs, both in the U.S. and Canada. It has been an amazing year of really terrific activities. I'm told, for example, that down in Texas, the Hill Country event drew some 170 Land Rovers. SCAR remains at that 120 mark. Dixon, I don't know. The birthday party, though, has seemingly gone on forever. It's an octogenarian party at this point and continues to draw enthusiasts from both Canada and the United States. The Rover Owners of Virginia, their club events are on the rise in terms of numbers, and they remain very entertaining events that draw new people. This is probably the most interesting part to me. I expect to see old friends there. I'm amazed at the number of people I meet who say, this is the first time I've done this. And that's just wonderful for the growth of Land Rover enthusiasm.
And you also in the western side of the country, they're stepping up their events. They've had the Rubicon.
Yep.
There's more clubs there than I even realized, and they're starting to have their own events. And yeah, it's a good time to be in the Land Rover enthusiast game, I guess.
Certainly is.
Yes, indeed. So, what events do you plan to attend this year that maybe people could meet and say hi to you?
Well, I don't
or maybe not.
because I may owe people favors or money, and I don't want them to know I'm there in advance, John.
Perfect. Good call. Good call. Good call. But they might see.
Trying to outrun the bookies, you are.
I certainly draw, attention to people. The spring here draws a goodly number of club events. The Rover Owners of Virginia have their Wintergreen event in early April. Of course, SCAR in Texas is mid-April. There is a West Virginia group that still does a January off-road event under Marshall Grant's leadership. Draw everyone's attention on the East Coast to the 2 Carolina Club events, the usually held at the Uharri National Forest, one in April again, one in October. So there's a lot just on the East Coast alone, let alone the events. And the other thing that I just want to highlight to everyone, the growth of social media means that it's pretty easy for enthusiasts in much smaller numbers to get together on a weekend. and just enjoy some light off-roading or green laning as a way to enjoy your Land Rover outside of its daily commute or daily uses. We just had one in Maine that was held at a brewery, and it was a great surprise that just before Christmas here, people could break away on a Sunday and really have a good time. It was a great turnout of vehicles and really different stuff. It was wonderful.
Well, let's turn to your fleet because it has grown this past year, and
you're up to 297 inches by my tally.
Initially, you started with just one, which was an 88-inch Series 2. A, thank you. And then you added, I believe it was over a year ago, you added a Discovery 1. I don't recall the year. And now you've added a 109. So how did that happen? Where'd that come from?
I have always wanted a 109 station wagon. I just consider...
As you should. They're awesome.
They are awesome. They just look right. They ask 10 or 12 people, depending on your rear seating configuration, to really get to know each other intimately because it remains a narrow vehicle.
Small
That's
friends.
An ambitious thing to say they hold 12 people, I gotta say.
They have to be small friends, Harold, not big friends.
Mind you, my meat wagon holds more than that if you're willing to hold to the same intimate standards.
So I told a little bit of this story last year in Rovers magazine, but to reiterate, in October of 2018, after the Mid-Atlantic Rally of the Rover Owners of Virginia, I found myself in Richmond, Virginia, at a specialty shop, Serrick Auto Work. Serrick Auto Work is owned and operated by Ralph Serrick, who largely works on newer Land Rovers, in addition to Minis and BMWs. That's his specialty niche. And a very, very competent group, well set up, very professionally run. While waiting for a courtesy ride from them to Richmond Airport to fly home, I saw two 109s, both blue, in his back lot. One of them looked like it stepped out of a Series 3 brochure for why you should have a 109 station wagon for your estate. The other one looked like it was a poster child for Save This Rover, or maybe something that would go with a Kickstarter campaign.
Or bring a trailer.
Bring several trailers, because I'm not certain you're going to get it out. And they were side by side, both marine blue. One, the Series 3, absolutely stunning in appearance. The Series 2A, less stunning in appearance. Dixon, Kenner, I know you're still on, I believe. Dixon owns a 109, and I want to suggest that this 109 may have been in rougher shape than the Green Beastie, Dixon.
Oh my! You have a challenge then.
That is a challenge. I asked Ralph Serrick why two of them were in his back lot, because I haven't seen two 109 station wagons together since the British invasion, when Jim Macri of the High Meadow Farm actually brought his collection to the British invasion. And he explained it as follows. The 109, that is the Series 3, the beautiful one, was owned by a couple who were working with the U.S. State Department, and they were stationed in Zimbabwe. And there they found this 109 Series 3 available for sale. They wished not to have a newer Defender model that they could have purchased there and brought back. They wanted something, in the words of the husband of that couple, more classic. So they bought this. They know that it spent part of its life prior to them in Malawi, because they had the registration records, in Zimbabwe, and it traveled also over to Uganda. That being said, they brought it back to them with the U.S. They both still work with the U.S. State Department. The 109, however, that very handsome one, was now proving to be just a little slow and perhaps a little less comfortable than they wished. So it was a candidate for a resto mod. They were going to lift its body in the air, Sarek was going to roll under a coil-sprung chassis with disc brakes. Ralph loves to do things like this. He was going to put a Range Rover motor in it and an automatic transmission. That would make it a car that looks quite old, if you will, and perhaps quite slow. At the same time, it would be up to contemporary standards, short of airbags, of a newer Defender, and that was going to be their big project. The other one, the one that caught my eye particularly, was so decrepit because it had just been hauled out of a family field not far from Richmond. It was owned and purchased by one of the founders of the Rover Owners of Virginia, whose name was Bill Rickman. He bought it used in 1971 from a Rover dealer in North Carolina for $2,100. And I know that because the bill of sale came with it. And he had traded in a Toyota Corona used, and that cut the price to about $1,000 for the actual purchase. And he then drove it back to Virginia, and it became a very active family vehicle. He gathered other Rover enthusiasts in the Richmond area to form the Rover Owners of Richmond, which became the Rover Owners of Virginia. They also decided that they should have some fun events to do little rallies, and they started what became the first Mid-Atlantic rally in Buckingham, Virginia. And again, photo evidence of that 109 at that event. Bill Rickman sadly passed away a couple of years back, and the family, his son, Bill the Fourth, I believe, actually, and his wife really couldn't decide what they were going to do with that vehicle. It needed quite a bit of refurbishment, and his son just didn't think he had the resources for it. His wife admitted, well, maybe I'm not that keen on it as a major expense late in my life. So Ralph Sarek convinced them to at least let him take it out of the field. So they dragged it, and thus it appeared in front of me. But Ralph could sense that beside him was standing a guy susceptible to the kind of Save the Children campaign that you see on television, generally late at night.
Also known as an easy mark.
That is so cruel. That is so cruel. Ralph said, we know that the chassis and drivetrain, the four-cylinder drivetrain in the beautiful Series 3 is in superb condition. We just don't know what we're going to do with it. The owners would like to sell it so that to help finance the refurbishment and, or if you will, the custom work that they're going to do in their beautiful Series 3. So I approached the Rickman family with a promise that I would look to put their 109 back on the road and that they would certainly see it if we could do the work in Richmond, which Ralph wanted to do, and then negotiated with the family that owned the beautiful 109, the Series 3, to say, how low a price would you accept for those parts? And the whole thought was, and this just shows how, even after decades of writing about Land Rovers, how little I know, that this would be an easy thing, lift the body off and roll it on.
Yeah, it's always an easy thing until you're the one holding the wrench.
Or the checkbook.
Or the checkbook.
So the sales were approved by the two respective families, and sometime in the spring started to talk when all the money was transferred and so on, began to talk with Sarek about what do we need to do to this decrepit 109 such that I could actually drive it and return it to the Mid-Atlantic Rally of 2019. One of the advantages of actually lifting it in the air was we would have a chance to replace parts and systems that are difficult to do when the vehicle is in one piece. When the body was lifted enough to see the condition of the rolling chassis under the Rickman family vehicle, the motor was seized. You could see how little of the frame, particularly the top of the frame rails, actually existed. The springs were flat. I'm confident all the brake lines were toast, and the wheel cylinders, I'm sure, were junk. The appeal of buying a rolling chassis of a Series 3 and converting it from right-hand drive to left-hand drive appealed to me greatly. It also gave an opportunity, even with the Series 3, to put a new wiring harness in, to have the braking system completely redone. Harold, you will know, Dixon, you know, and I am learning 109 brakes in the series vehicles are notoriously difficult to get right, to adjust and bleed. There must be some kind of incantation that I'm not doing, but they have proven to be difficult throughout. But that being said,
they are what I call fiddly.
Well,
fiddly is such a nice way. Isn't there usually an adverb that goes in front of the word fiddly?
Well, this is a family show, Jeff.
I was going to say that we can't say exactly.
There's a couple things, but you have a TR7, and one of the old adages from the 70s was that if you drove your 109 onto a TR7 up to about the shock towers, the master cylinder will be level so you can bleed it.
I've now
there you
parked
go.
it. I have parked it on a hill with its nose in the air in the hope that I can bleed it better.
Now there is a good reason to own a TR7.
There's got to be one, aside from the color scheme of my TR7, which is just unbelievably groovy. Exactly.
As long as you like it.
I had a twin of it once.
Yes, you did, Dixon. That's right. You told me that. I think that's wondrous. But to continue, I really have a very limited budget. And I need to commend Ralph Sarek and his team for understanding what it meant, so that we really looked at what are the vital things so that the car can not just be driven to the event, but driven home, but also so that I don't have to take it apart yet again to do the things that should have been done from the get-go. Right. So the car still has its original, and I believe this is a polite way of saying this, patina. You can tell it's blue because there's still patches of blue, and there's even some reddish undercoating, primer paint underneath it. The panels were pretty straight from the get-go. There was some welding work that definitely had to be done on the bulkhead, and that was accomplished, for which I really thank everybody for doing that. We also had the opportunity to replace a couple of the door tops where the glass had been broken, or the door tops just folded over so badly that they became air scoops when you went down the road. We took
Fortunately, I think you know a place where you can get things like that pretty easily.
I can. They're not free from that wonderful parts supplier, Rovers North.
Understood, but you don't have to look. You know where to get them.
I know where to get them. And believe me, I believe that there might have even been just a FedEx plane that took parts from Burlington, Vermont Airport right to Richmond Airport for some of the parts that came. One of the things that I did learn, however, was that there were frame repairs done to the beautiful truck while it was somewhere either in Zimbabwe or Malawi, because when we tried to get a twin fuel tank installed, we found that a frame rail had been moved such that that wasn't possible. So the only fuel tank I have in that is a single tank in the rear of the vehicle. On a vehicle which has poor gas mileage to start with, limits range. If your fuel gauge doesn't work, like mine doesn't, you need to pay a lot of attention as to how much fuel you actually are burning as you're going down the road.
Did you repair
You need one of those little sand glasses. You flip it over when the sands run out, so does your fuel.
Yes, or I simply need to use the apps on my phone, like Waze, to tell me how far I've gone, and I can put in the approximate fuel mileage, figure it at about 14 and that thing. So, but the amazing part was that for the most part, everything did go together well. And the challenge of converting it from right-hand drive to left-hand drive was not too difficult. I took the opportunity not only of the door tops, but also to put new windshield glass in, because again, it was so scratched up that you just couldn't see the front very well. There was a marvelous collection of old parts that came with it, and a tremendous pile of just old rust that when we emptied out various compartments in the rear, you found. It was quite something to see. The front seats have a cloth cover just over the original seats, but that's all. The middle seat is intact, and the two folding rear benches were intact. And as a matter of fact, I actually bolted them in a couple of weeks ago. They had just been lying folded and loose in the rear. I took the opportunity to buy new tires, thus improving the value of the vehicle by about 35% or so by putting new tires on.
I was thinking 4 times.
I'm happy to report that BF Goodrich now does make all-terrain mud and snow in a narrower size than I've experienced in recent years. Ralph Sarek managed to find them, and they look fabulous, and the car tracked very beautifully from it. New steering components, front rods, steering arms, and so on for safety and security, all new braking system. We checked all the wiring over. I still wish that I could have done something with the engine. I may yet put a different engine harness in afterwards, but we just didn't have the time, and I didn't have the budget to do that. But the new wiring harness to the rear means that shock of shocks, every front and rear lamp work as they're supposed to.
Ooh, good for
this
you.
week.
Without any fooling around with it. Yeah,
enjoy
right.
that.
Yeah, I will for a while at least.
Right. Did you put it together with silicone grease?
I use dielectric grease. Yeah.
Yeah. That really helps the longevity of that stuff.
That's beautiful. The other glorious thing that happened was that the Rickman family, the wife and son, came to Sarek a day before we left for the Mid-Atlantic Rally to see and hear the vehicle start up.
Nice.
Yes, that was a really tough. I have lots of the son, Bill Rickman IV, is actually a professional photographer. So he wanted, we took it, we are near a mall area with a lot of grassy walking paths and so on. So we simply drove it onto one of those grassy and tree-lined walking paths to make it look like it was in the woods. Took a lot of photos there.
Nice. Good.
Mrs. Rickman was in tears when she saw it. And I don't know if they were tears of joy that it was no longer in her yard, or tears of joy of pleasant sadness over all the adventures she and her former husband had with it.
Did she get the ride in it?
She did,
Good.
briefly. Yes,
Oh,
we
that's
took a
nice.
brief ride in it. There were some last-minute things, as there always are, Harold, you'll know this, when you try and produce a vehicle from scratch like that. But they were all taken care of. In the end, we convoyed to the Mid-Atlantic Rally at about, leaving at about 4 p.m. for a 6.5 hour drive to the Blacksburg area. We took back roads, which were beautiful, as long as there was daylight, and slowly but surely discovered that we had a 250-mile trip ahead of us that was actually the first time the car had been driven.
That's not risky or anything.
No risk there. But I did convoy with others from Sarek. I do want to just put a side note in. While my vehicle was being refurbished, enthusiasts from the Rover Owners of Virginia in that area started to spread the word that Sarek Auto Work, which primarily had worked on contemporary Land Rovers, was now entering, if you will, the refurbishment of a series truck. A call came to Ralph Sarek out of the blue from someone about an hour away who said, I have 4 Land Rovers of that vintage in a barn, and I'd like to get rid of them. Ralph went with a couple of trailers. They arranged a price, and he brought them back to his shop. Within a week, all 4 were sold. So there are 4 Land Rovers being refurbished now. One's completed, I think, but the others all have good homes and are all going to be worked on. They'll be back on the road, which is great.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's really wonderful.
Absolutely.
So during the trip to Mar, and Aronson, it was well attended, great fun. Weather turned out to be good. That's when I discovered that the rear brakes on my car weren't working because one of the wheel cylinders had failed. We clamped it off and bought a lot of brake fluid, and drove back to Richmond. I stayed a couple of extra days, and all of that was repaired. Even put the thing on an alignment to make sure that those new tires would stay beautiful. And I then began a 800-mile drive home in a 1967 body, 1976 drivetrain, which had not been subjected to any serious driving in a long time. It was just tootling around Richmond. I took back roads for probably a third of the trip through Maryland and Pennsylvania, and then got onto a highway because I really needed to get back to cover the Rebel Rally, which I did in that same month of October. The drive in the 109 proved to be one of these life expeditions. First off, you cannot stop for fuel, food, or a pit stop without being engaged in conversation from people who are not Rover enthusiasts.
Yep.
You simply cannot stop.
Yep.
And you cannot say, I'm in a hurry. You
Nope.
can't do it. I had 2 instances in which people who are Land Rover enthusiasts were in different vehicles, electronically put down their windows to yell at me, I have one, which meant we had to pull over and stop at the side of the road and talk about our Land Rovers and share photos and so on. I'm happy to say both of them were readers of Rovers magazine and will be in the upcoming issue. I had one problem, and that's the fuel gauge didn't work from the get-go, but the speedometer had a sort of cardiac event because it probably had not gone that fast and that far in a long while, and it simply broke. And it wasn't the cable.
Thus ending your ability to count the miles and figure your remaining fuel.
Yes. Yeah, it cut into it. And I'm proud to say that I only ran out of gas once, but that itself was a pleasant.
Pretty good.
Yes. But the amazing thing to me, and again, for those of your listeners or you, Harold, or you, Dixon, or you, John, who are more experienced with Land Rovers than I might be, I'm in a vehicle decades old, which really hasn't gone anywhere. And I'm asking it to simply get me home on time for 800 miles and without a lot of drama. I was lucky that the weather was good. I was lucky that it would cross over 60 miles an hour on interstates as long as we weren't going uphill. This particular one had a ferry overdrive that worked beautifully.
There you go. That's why you got over 60.
That's probably the case. And that I just found that the entire experience was totally exhilarating. It took, I gave myself 2.5 days. It was totally exhilarating to do. I can't stress enough that your Land Rover will probably do far more than you think it should, given any age or any condition. They are remarkably built, remarkably engineered. I'm thrilled to have it here. I've gotten a good deal of ribbing as to exactly why I have yet another one.
Not from us.
No.
Yes.
From residents.
No, I figure you're off to a good start.
Yeah.
The locals don't understand, Jeff. They just don't understand.
I mean, you need one for every day of the week, and then maybe you can slow down. But actually, I think the ideal number is one for every day of the week plus a spare.
Yes, but I am absolutely gobsmacked by the fun of having the 109. And the QE1, the 88, has not lost an iota of its charm to me. And when I have to carry people who are not Land Rover enthusiasts, I have a Discovery. I actually loaned the Discovery out to some seasonal residents when I was away for one weekend. That's how confident I am in the Discovery. And with no instructions.
Is the 109 your first Land Rover with a ferry overdrive?
No, I had a ferry. I had a ferry on the QE1 on the 88 for many years. There's a great story behind that. There is one road east-west across Maine, Route 2. It eventually goes all the way to the Canadian border near Plattsburgh, New York. It is the only road, truthfully, southern or to the northern side of Maine, New Hampshire, and crosses Vermont. At one period in the 90s, I was driving the QE1 to a job in Vermont, and I passed a antique shop with tons of automotive stuff outside it. So it said antiques. It's in Bethel, East Bethel, Maine. It could also be called a salvage yard. But with the sign antiques, it all takes on a new flavor.
It's just a fancier junk shop.
Much fancier. On my way back, I am slowly going through the village of East Bethel, and suddenly there's a guy standing outside flagging me down. He's standing outside the antique shop. His name is Rodney. He said, I saw you go by a couple of days ago, and I live and work right here, and I've been waiting to see if you're coming back, because you had Maine plates, so I knew you were heading west. I was hoping you were coming home. The reason was he had a brand new Ferry Overdrive in a box. He once owned a Land Rover.
Oh my God. In a box, brand new.
In a box. Because, however, he's a crafty antiques dealer, he knew exactly what a new one through any of the Land Rover parts companies was worth, and he wasn't offering any bargains.
Well, mint in box always brings more money, right?
Yes, exactly. I probably lowered its value by taking it out of the box and installing it.
Of course you did. You played with it. It's not worth anything now.
So over the decades of the QE1, I've actually had two of them. That was one Overdrive, and when that one wore out, I bought one of the last ones that Rovers North had at the time.
So the bottom line is you're familiar with the song of the ferries then. It didn't disconcert in the 109 to hear it singing at you.
And I must say, it's singing at a much quieter volume and a lower register than the one in the QE1 did as it wore out. So this one's in pretty good shape. It was wonderful to have it. Definitely, the 109 is definitely slower, even though the compression is good because of that extra weight and length with the same 2.25 engine as the 88 has. But it's a wonderful experience to own them. I'm reminded constantly why I just love series Land Rovers. And at the same time, I'm reminded that many people don't find it fun to actually have to bail out the inside of the passenger compartment where the water collects during heavy rainstorms before you can take somebody in it.
People don't find it fun to have to use both hands to steer it. There are people who don't find it fun to actually have to change the gears from one to another.
Well, you know what I say about those people, Jeff, that don't like sitting in the truck and bailing it out? That you really don't need to take them with you.
Yeah, perhaps they might enjoy walking more.
Yes, exactly.
Many of them eyeball the Discovery and say, can we take that? Because,
of course.
To my amazement, my Discovery doesn't leak. So
have you
don't jinx it. Don't
have you
don't tempt the Rover gods.
Yeah, I won't. But it is I'm just reminded what a joy it was to drive at that distance at obviously at relatively lower speeds. On the back roads that have forced me, I went through some of the most beautiful countryside I'd never seen before, just thoroughly enjoying the trip and enjoying my vanity being stoked, enjoyed the attention that it brings you.
Sure.
It turns an ordinary trip into an adventure.
It does. I love it.
Is this now your daily, so to speak?
I swap them off. One of the problems with having only a rear tank and a mechanical fuel pump and ethanol-laced gasoline is that if you don't start it up fairly often, the pressure doesn't hold and it drains back. I don't drive it necessarily every day, but I certainly try and start it up every couple of days. The QE1 is the more utility of the vehicles. But John, there are times when I'm invited to the kind of thing where a 109 Land Rover station wagon, deluxe station wagon, is warranted. So I save it for those kinds of events.
And the 109 would haul more firewood too, wouldn't it?
Oh, it's wondrous. It carried my Christmas tree. I just bought a set of wheels and tires from another enthusiast to replace the kind of corroded wheels on the QE1. And all four wheels, it ate it up as if there was nothing else in the way.
I once hauled over 2 full cords of wood in my meat wagon.
I get it. I really get it.
Will it be getting
a seat? Takes up a little bit of space, but that being said,
it folds.
Yes, it does. Not quite as well, but it folds.
And not as well as you'd think it should, but nonetheless,
Right.
it will move out of the way.
It will move out of the way. But just having that extra wheelbase, I will say the extra wheelbase, really, you feel it on most highway driving. It is actually a lot more comfortable.
Oh yeah, definitely. It jackrabbits less.
Yes, exactly. Pounds less. And I have parabolics on the 88, and this just has the standard leaf springs still. And they did not
wait till you step up to the parabolics on the 109. It'll be that much nicer again.
Yeah, when it comes time to replace the springs, these are in good shape. I'll do that.
I think you'll find it rides better than the Disco.
Ooh.
Or in the same neighborhood, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I will eagerly await, but thankfully the springs still have a nice arc to them. So I'm hoping that we don't have to do some of that kind of work. We need to reestablish the savings account.
Right.
The critical
Absolutely.
aspect of any Land Rover ownership.
Very much so.
Will it have a different name than 109? Is there a name coming through?
Yes. So the naming of a Rover, of a Land Rover, is a very challenging operation. I spent much of the trip, obviously not listening to any radio, there was none, dreaming up what name should it be. I have to acknowledge it's Virginia heritage. I bought a vehicle to be the steward of a piece of Virginia Land Rover history, so I cannot ignore that. And there is kind of a beefiness to a 109. It simply looks substantial, particularly when you're an 88 owner. It just looks substantial. And being a station wagon just has I use the term substance, a kind of John Bull substance to it.
Size does matter.
Yes, size does matter, exactly. So this is now Conan the Virginian.
Nice. Now, do you have to speak with an Austrian accent when you drive it then?
No, thankfully I do not. I can
Yes,
speak
use
it with my general accent.
No, you have to use your Boston accent because he's naming it after Conan O'Brien.
That's right. As Conan O'Brien is from Brookline,
okay.
Massachusetts. Yep.
Okay.
It's perfect. It makes complete sense to me.
So that's the story behind Conan, and I am certainly looking forward to some adventure trips with him. He's tooling around the island right now. He did go on the meeting of the Down East Land Rover Group last week, so he went off on the mainland and did some higher speed travel, and he acquitted himself very well, other than his brakes. Right.
You going to take that one to the romp?
The issue of taking it to the romp is, one, it still has the Smith's heater, that round heater.
The shin burner.
The shin burner. And door seals are largely absent at the moment. But the other, probably the more complicating part is, as Dixon will note, the trails at the winter romp are fairly narrow and windy. The turning circle,
which is not fun in a long truck. Oh yeah,
still astounds me how bad it is.
Yeah, it's like driving an aircraft carrier through the woods.
I've really had to adjust just to backing it into places because you just don't get much of a turn, an arc when you turn that.
That is the one downside to the long trucks. They don't turn, and the overhang kind of kills you when you're going through deep ruts on the trail.
Yeah, so probably not. Would like to take the QE1. It'd be fun to be back in the series truck. I took the Discovery last year. It'd be fun to be back in the series truck again. But I'm hoping that to smaller events in New England that I can take Conan. I think we would be fun. It'd be nice to camp out of it. I'm amazed. I don't carry very much when I go camping, but the back of the QE1 is full up. It'd be nice to have that extra room.
I hear you.
You're gonna love it.
Thank you, Dixon. Yeah, I look forward to it. I really do.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. You'll start carrying stuff and carry more, and you'll carry more.
So this will also be the story behind Conan. Will also be and the refurbishment and the trip home is also an article in the upcoming Rovers magazine.
Jeff, thanks for coming on the program once again, talking to us, giving us an update, where you are, what's happening in Land Rover world. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome, John. Thank you for letting me be a part of the Centresteer podcast. Thoroughly enjoyable to listen to. I actually downloaded one, and it was part of my entertainment, quote unquote, on the trip home back in the QE. Harold, it's great to hear your voice again. And Dixon, thank you for coming down from Canada.
Well, I'll see you at Winter Romp.
That is a treat. That's wonderful. Incidentally, John, to your readers, Dixon, can you help me here? Is your newsletter online and available to non-members or to members only?
All of the back issues are up online on the website. It's only the most recent couple of issues that are not online, but eventually they do get put on.
So, John, I want to urge all of your listeners to go on to the Ottawa Valley Land Rover Club website and read the newsletter. Dixon, you don't get enough credit for yet again being editor of that, but there is a quality of writing. There are tales that if you didn't read them, you'd have trouble believing them, and a just thorough enjoyment of Land Rovers that is in every single issue that the club puts out. I commend everybody for the consistent quality of that newsletter. It's wondrous, and all of your readers will enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
I'm currently enjoying the stamp discussion of all the different stamps that Land Rovers have been featured in. It's, I'm not like a big stamp guy, but it's kind of cool to learn about that and what's happening.
That's the kind of story you don't run across just everywhere either, which makes it pretty cool.
No, and to be blunt, the degradation of stamps in the U.S., most recently Sesame Street and the Muppets stamps. Come on, guys. The stamps that other nations put out are works of art, and when a Land Rover's in them, they're even better. It's an amazing thing.
Land Rovers make everything better. Don't they?
I just don't see that in U.S. stamps.
Jeff, where can folks find you, track you down? I know, but let's let our listeners know.
You can always go to roversmagazine.com to see our archived copies of the magazine. If you don't receive it, you can certainly request copies. Through social media, I'm on Instagram as Land Rover Writer and on Facebook as myself. And happy to meet new people, new enthusiasts through those social media programs and apps. And hopefully I can meet more of you at upcoming Land Rover events. We'll be notifying everyone through Rovers Magazine's online presence as well, where we'll be.
And I should clarify that Rovers Magazine is only available for North American folks via postal delivery, right?
By post, that's right. We do not send outside of North America.
The best way to subscribe to that magazine is just to buy something from Rovers North, and it'll show up in the box, and then it'll be mailed to you after that, right?
Right. So Rovers Magazine is a service of Rovers North, and Rovers North provides the magazine free to every active customer of Rovers North. And by active, that generally means within the past couple of years, if you've purchased anything from the company, they're happy to provide you with a free copy of the quarterly. And if you find yourself without one for some reason, as it says in the magazine, make a phone call or email to Rovers North, and we'll check and see if it's our error, because it does happen once in a while.
Well, we tried to close this before. We're going to do it again now. Thanks very much, Jeff, for coming on the show. Again, appreciate it. Thanks for all you do for the community. And want to thank you very much for that. And want to thank you very much for talking to us. And have yourself a great 2020.
Thank you. Same to everybody. A Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to one and all.
Roverkids on the Centresteer podcast. We had the pleasure of talking with 7 kids ranging in age from 3 to 20 years old from the U.S., Canada, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. Henry, Astrid, Nathan, Alexander, Reese, Keelan, and Jessica. Thanks to them and their parents for talking with us. They are Land Rover fans, some going to local events, some traveling across countries, and 2 literally growing up in a Defender. From Mobile, Alabama, Nathan and Alexander.
My name is Alexander, and I am 10.
Hello, I'm Nathaniel Bell, and I'm 13.
My name is Keelan Michael Bell,
and I'm 20 years old. I've been living in a Land Rover for over 7 years now, and I've been to over 50 countries.
I am Reese Williams from the UK. I am 9 years old.
My name is Jessica Bell, and I'm 15 years old, and I've basically been doing the same thing as my brother.
Hello.
Hi, Astrid.
I am 12.
Henry. 3.
What Land Rovers are in your family? Have they been given names? And what interests you about Land Rovers?
We have 2 Land Rovers. Named Mickey and one named Gertrude. Mickey has a wheel flat and a ladder, and Gertrude has no ladder.
But Gertrude has a snorkel, right?
Yeah, and Mickey doesn't have a snorkel.
He could say Gertrude before he could say Mum, believe it or not. Did not impress Mum, did it?
3 Land Rovers, a 1970 109 station wagon, the 1969 88-inch ragtop, and a 2006 Freelander 1.
Our mom hasn't named any of her Land Rovers or Range Rovers, but our dad just names them Brutus and then whichever number it is.
I love the name Brutus, but I think if it's like a dark or light blue, I would go with Pluto as in the planet, since it would look like the planet.
Friday was named after this book that my dad's mom would read to me every night about this donkey in the Grand Canyon. And Eeyore was named after the Winnie the Pooh character, because my dad always said that he was grumpy, kind of like Eeyore was. And he was like, because he has this cup that says one wise ass, and there's a donkey on it. That's why he named it Eeyore.
What are the names of your Land Rovers?
One of them is called Wobble because the start of its number plate is WBL. One of them is called Rex because the start of its number plate is RXX. And one of them, and the Freelander, is called Phoebe. I have absolutely no idea why.
Hi, John. What's your favorite Land Rover?
It is a 110. It's a Defender 110.
What's your favorite?
A disco. It can go fast.
What's your favorite color of Land Rover?
Blue.
Where do you like to go in the blue disco?
Anywhere.
Your parents have the Land Rovers. How many do they have?
Well, right now, obviously, we've only got Mafuta, the one. At one point when we were living in Mopo Strand, on the Cape of South Africa, we had, I think it was something like 4 or 5 at a point. Range Rover series, Defender, and we've always kind of loved Land Rover. And that kind of started at the beginning of my dad's adulthood.
I think I get it from them because it doesn't feel forced at all. I just naturally love them. They're just, how do I explain this? They just really, it's like you have a bond.
The reasons that I really love Land Rovers, the Defenders especially, is because Mafuta, whenever she's broken down, she's been considerate with breaking down. Like, we'll be in a campsite, or we'll just get off the trail, or we'll be somewhere where we're in an area where we can fix it. We've never been truly stranded because of our vehicle. And that's a beautiful thing, is like, even when we had the clutch issue in Morocco, where we broke down in the mountains, we broke down outside of this guy's farm. So we were right near civilization. It wasn't like we're just in the middle of the Moroccan mountains, in the middle of nowhere. It was right there where we could get help. And that's one beautiful thing, is Land Rovers do have a soul, and they have got a personality. And that's why we named her Mafuta. It's because she has a personality. I have a connection with all Land Rovers. I feel not really the history, although I would actually like to learn more of the history. I have this connection where when I get in a Land Rover, I know it's a Land Rover, and I can feel that. And I kind of feel safe in an odd way because it's a Land Rover and I'm familiar with it. I'm not going to feel the same if I get into a Dodge Ram or something like that. There's this weird installed comfiness and coziness of a Land Rover, even though it's so Lego-like.
Either of you have a specific model that you like over the others?
The Range Rover Sport would be my favorite. I just like the feel of it. Some people might say that there's not a whole lot of room, which I can understand, but to me it's just a perfect fit.
Well, my favorite vehicle is probably a Breeze 2. Both of us can fit in the very back where we usually put the groceries or cargo. It's a lot of space back there.
Jessica, do you like Land Rovers?
Yeah, I like them actually. It depends actually. On trails, not so much. I mean, it's great on trails, but it's just too much for me. I'm like, oh no, no, thank you. Yeah, I like Land Rovers. They're nice.
I love Land Rovers. I love the fact that they're like adult Lego. That, I mean, we did the whole rebuild in America, and we only made one cut, and the cut that we made was for a cosmetic body part. It wasn't anything vital to the construction of the vehicle. So the ability to build and do whatever you want on that chassis and have it work well is just an amazing thing. In terms of comfort, I mean, there is things left to be desired if you're talking about Defenders, but I mean, the Discoveries are amazing off-road, but they've got the air conditioning and they've got the comfortable seats and they're really nice. The same goes for the Range Rover, unless you're talking about an old Range Rover where the headboards, the headrests are literally just bags of stones.
I think I just like the 1984 Series 3 that my dad has, just because they're like small and compact. They're like simple, but yet there's like they can do a lot. So I like those ones.
Yours? Someone else's?
In terms of aspects of Land Rovers, like I said, I appreciate the fact that it's like adult Lego, that you can take it apart and put it back together the way you want it. But it's also, I really love the way that it performs off-road, especially the Defenders. I mean, we say with Mafuta, it's like cheating, because we can get through some really gnarly stuff with a Land Rover that almost every other vehicle would have trouble getting through. And that's one of the best things, is we can go anywhere, but we can also get out of a pinch, and we can do all that. And I would have to say that's my favorite part of it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that Mafuta is family. She's family, and she has her own personality, and I love her actually. She's like a motorized sister.
Do you have a first memory of Land Rovers?
When I was 4 years old, me and my family, we went camping in our Land Rover, and we had a rooftop tent and there was like this beautiful lake and a campfire. So that was my first memory.
What Land Rover was that?
Brighty, a 110 1984.
Are you a deep into Land Rover person?
I'm into Land Rovers, but I don't really fix them, and I don't really know a lot of facts about them. But probably when I get older, I'll start to learn to drive. Well, my dad actually has two, and he's going to give me the smaller one that's named Eeyore, which is named after the Winnie the Pooh character, which is a 1974 88-inch, and he's going to give me that one.
First memory, probably being driven around in a 1969 Series 2A ragtop as a baby. And I remember being driven around our driveway in the 88-inch, and we use the Freelander every day.
First memory, I don't even know if it's a real one, was we were gathered somewhere up in North Alabama. Me, my family, my dad, and all of his buddies, just in our Land Rovers, going through a bunch of mountains and dirt roads.
Do you remember what vehicle that was?
I think that was Brutus 2.
That's the Disco 2, isn't it?
Yeah.
We actually have done quite a few road trips. Like, we went to Newfoundland, and this summer we went through America, Mexico, Guatemala, and then we looped back. It was from June 16th to August 28th. Oh, I sat in the back. Our Land Rover doesn't have AC. I think most don't. But anyway, it was like really hot, and it was 37 plus degrees, 86% humidity. And we actually got stuck in traffic for 2 hours in Guatemala. And I remember we were all holding fans over our faces like, oh my God, it's so hot. Oh, we took Brighty, which is the 110 TDI 1984.
Well, the only memory that I can remember is a few years ago we were at a British Comic-Con, more of a competition to see who had the best vehicle. So you all got to have Hot Wheel cars signed up for the competition. Mine had a 24, a number 24 on it.
It was, we had this old series. It used to be a fire truck. And I remember that on one of my birthdays being in the back there with a bunch of my friends just going through the mud in that, and then getting stuck in the mud with the old series. And then all of us having to pile out of the back of this the series through the mud in that, and then having a tractor pull the series out and us all jumping back inside and then driving off again. Probably 7, something like that, maybe a bit younger.
The first thing that comes to mind for some reason is just like falling asleep instantly. Because like whenever we go into the Land Rover, I'm just like, bam, I'm asleep.
Do you have a best memory of being in a Land Rover?
A few years ago when we Range Rover Sport, that was my favorite time that I can remember around or being in a Land Rover.
Best memory, probably at the dealership here in Mobile that our dad used to work at. They had a little track set up of an off-road terrain, and he would let us sit in the Land Rover while he tested it to make sure that everything was fixed.
The Land Rover is like really cool, but also sometimes when you're driving in it, it's also kind of like awkward because you stop at the light, and if one of your friends in the street, they know it's you. It's like, oh, hi, Astrid, and you're like, hi, but like it's like you want to duck because you don't want to have that awkward conversation. You're just like, and then everyone always thinks I'm driving. My dad is on the wrong side of the vehicle, and one time we were driving, my mom was on her phone, and she was in the front of the car. So the cops actually pulled us over, and the cop he's like all mad, like, you don't get on your phone, and then he's like, oh. It happened quite a lot where they go, oh, it's the other side.
Are the Alpine windows good for anything?
I like those ones. When it rains, I like to draw on them, and then I'll write hi on them. Yeah. The light shines in just perfectly for reading. It goes in through the windows.
What adventures have you been on? What adventures do you want to be a part of? And where do you want to travel to?
A couple of weeks ago, we went to Simply Land Rover. There is Kelmarsh, Peterborough, Bellingoff Roadshow, and we go to events with the South Wales Land Rover Club.
They have a lot to do, but I think they should add a competition to see if anybody has a remote control Land Rover to see who's can turn better.
I became an explorer at Defenders that they can go anywhere. Camping!
I have this one story where we were going to camp, and it was like, I think my first time at sleepaway camp, but I don't think my dad fully fixed the Land Rover before we went, because like halfway there we broke down on the highway, and I don't remember how long we were stuck, but all I know is that we just broke down, and I didn't get the bunk I wanted.
South America. The whole family, and I can say this, maybe not Jessica, but most of the family is absolutely in love with South America. My dad plans his route just so he can get back to South America eventually. So being able to go around southern South America, Argentina, Uruguay, southern Brazil, maybe Colombia, those areas are just, they're beautiful. The people are beautiful. Everything about it is just, we loved it. I mean, we spent 2.5 years in South America, so that's kind of testament to how much we loved it. So definitely, and you could probably ask everybody in this family, and they'd probably agree, South America.
Yeah, I would say either South America or Europe, definitely, because South America, of course, like what Keeling said, but also because Europe, because some parts we weren't there for long. We were like, some countries we were there for a day, but I would just like to see more places. Like, I just love to explore more of Europe and just like get into it, you know? And yeah, like Keeling said, even the people in Europe, most of them are just, they're beautiful, and they just have this, how do I say this? I love the culture. It's just, and some people are just so hospitable. But if it was a country, what would you say, Keeling?
Uruguay.
I would say the Switzerland or Brazil, definitely.
Yeah.
Or Germany. Oh, Germany was nice.
If it was like free of charges, and like if I didn't have to pay fuel or food or any fees or anything like that, it would definitely be Northern Europe, because I haven't been there, but I would definitely like to go there, like the Scandinavian countries, maybe Finland, like just explore that region, that basically that top band. I would really love to explore that area.
I'd like to take Land Rovers on journeys. I'd like to take a new Defender around the world if I could. Probably through Europe, through Africa, Australia, then around America.
I would definitely like to drive the Land Rover on a daily basis, because I feel like if you're going to have a Land Rover, it's a full-time job. You can't just have it in the back and then drive your other car. You have to fix it. You always have to see if it's working in the winter. You gotta let it warm up. It's just it's a full-time job, so you gotta can't just abandon it if you're gonna get one. It's like a baby, except a car version.
What year did Land Rover start?
Oh shoot. Wait, wasn't it in the 70s or something?
1960?
1948.
The individuals who started Land Rover?
Morrison Spencer Wilkes.
When did the Discovery come out?
1989.
Do you know the name of the very first Land Rover?
Oh, was it the Defender?
Series 1, Series 2, 2A, and Series 3. Stage 1 V8.
What was the Defender called before it was called the Defender?
90 or 110.
Do you know what year the first Overland took place?
56.
55, 56. And what trucks did they use?
Series 1s.
And what were their names?
Oxford and Cambridge. Oxford's the one that is doing the last Overland, and Cambridge is lost.
Name the different Land Rover models.
There's a Defender.
Yes. You heard
There's the Range Rover.
Yes.
There's the Discovery.
Yes. Do you know any Overlanders that travel in a Land Rover?
There's Day Trippers, which is Rafa and Isa from Brazil. Then there's Grizzly and Bear Overland. They're one's Australia and then Australian and French, and they're traveling around. There was this old couple, I don't know what their official name is, but they're Bull and Rosemary, was it? Yeah, Bull and Rosemary. She was an old teacher, and he was just a really cool old guy. And they traveled around South America in a Defender.
Oh, there's so many others.
Yeah, there's a lot of people overlanding.
You missed one important one.
Who?
Yourselves.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, but that doesn't count. You can't, I can't list myself.
Well, how about your parents?
Oh, yeah. Well, I view us as one entity. Yeah.
Best 4x4 by far.
Land Rover.
How has overlanding impacted your life? And what observations do you have? You two especially are extremely rare because you grew up in a Land Rover, and that's an extremely rare thing to have happened. You actually live and work, and that was your home. Do you enjoy that life? Did you like it? Do you think would you have liked a different experience?
For me, it was the best option. I love overlanding. I love traveling. And it's been just amazing to grow up the way that I've wanted to for the past 7 years and experience the things that I would have never experienced otherwise. I've experienced more unique experiences in my lifetime than some people will in their whole existence. I love it, especially for me, because the South African schooling system was just trying to force me into a mold. I was just getting bullied and stuff like that. So it wasn't a good situation for me before I left. And after we left, my self-confidence just shot through the roof. I've been happy. I'm not exactly an extremely social person, so I didn't lose anything from leaving that type of life. I would say that I've been in total 10 times happier than I would have ever been just growing up in South Africa.
For me, I would say it's about 50-50. I love it, but another part of me would want a normal life like everyone else. But I do think that traveling is just an amazing thing, because there's so much that you learn outside of classroom. You learn so many new cultures, languages, and you meet so many amazing people in different countries. And it's just beautiful to see how each person lives. And I just love that. But then another part of me is like, oh, what would it be like to have just a normal life? Stay home and do school, go to school, have friends, blah, blah, blah. My life right now is better than most kids my age, in complete honesty.
She spent more than half of her life in the Land Rover.
Yeah, this year I think it would be most of my life
Yeah.
Out of it.
Yeah, in the Land.
In it. Sorry,
Yeah.
I mean like out of normal life.
Travel with your home.
I really love it. There's this kind of a sense of security, having your house as your home. You're constantly moving. You're constantly having a new scenery. Everything's changing all the time. And one valuable thing that I think I've learned from all of this is how to be adaptable and to adapt to my surroundings and make the most of it. That's one thing that a lot of people actually suffer with nowadays, is not being able to adapt to their surrounding. And I think that's one side of traveling that's really positively affected me, is being able to adapt.
I think it's great because I know because we're traveling in our home, I know I'll be safe. I know if we're like stuck somewhere, we can still have food. We can still sleep. We're with each other. We're basically the family is home. It's not just a Land Rover. Not to be like cheesy or anything, but I know that if we're together in the Land Rover, we're all safe together. We sort things out, and it's great.
While traveling, how is life affected on the social standpoint? For me personally, I was social, but I wasn't really social before we left. Traveling really made me social. Going to South America, where there's such this family and community, you can feel it. And people are walking around at night. There's kids everywhere. There's that social side where I can make friends with the person at camp, and I can be their best friend for those few days that I'm there, and then I leave and I go to the next place, and I'm the next person's best friend, and it goes on like that. It's that cycle. And then there's the beauty of the internet, where I can keep those relationships going with all these people that I've met. Sadly, I'm not very good at it, so I don't really do it. Possibility to have that relationship going with all these people from all these countries and have the social side, but completely different from the normal hierarchies of just a normal life. One thing, though, that I did notice is in South America, there's a very community-driven aspect where people walk around. There's a lot of kids around and all of that. But then when we went to America, we just couldn't see any kids. It was just like there were no kids anywhere, and there was nobody for me to socialize with that. And then I got into the internet side of it. And I think I'm still recovering from the blow that did to my social skills. I was communicating every single day with people in South America, but now in America I had nobody to talk to. So I turned to gaming, and I started gaming on my computer and on my laptop and all of that. And I made some actually really good friends on those platforms. There was no actual other sort of community that I could seek while I was at a campsite or something like that. And the availability of internet in America just made it that much easier for me. There's a lot of people that say there's a lot of negative aspects to the social life of people because of the internet, and I do believe that is true.
Yeah.
Going from South America, where there's a lot less free access to the internet, to America, the USA in particular, and everybody's got their social medias and stuff like that, but it's a different lifestyle that people have. Even if South Americans had the access to internet, they wouldn't act the same. They still have that community. They still like going out and being out and going to the public parks and all of that, and having those play dates, so to speak, with the kids. And you just see a lot more kids in general in South America, where in North America it's a bit more locked down type of thing. Is they go from school to their house, then they talk online, and then they go to their friends' houses, and you very rarely actually see kids above the age of, I would say, 11 really outdoors. So it was very interesting to see how going from even Central America to North America, how it could be night and day, how many kids were out and about. And I think that is highly connected to the internet.
What 3 things do you miss about normal life while overlanding?
The thing about normal life is there's a lot to envy. And that's the same thing about traveling. There's a lot to envy. I could write 100 things that I miss about a normal life that I would like in a normal life and stuff like that. But there's also, I can write to 200 things that I love about traveling and things like that. And I love traveling more than I love being in a normal situation with a normal routine and all of that, because the days just disappear in routine. If everything's the same, you just stop remembering it. Whereas having every single day being unique in its own sense, that allows me to remember it clearly and experience it more thoroughly. It kind of goes back to schooling in the sense that if you experience being at Machu Picchu, you'll actually remember it compared to reading about it and learning about it in a school from a black and white picture in a textbook. I had the unhealthy habit of reading the stuff in the textbooks just so I could pass the test and then completely forgetting everything that I'd learned. When I travel, I actually experience and I actually remember what I've seen and what I've experienced. While I do come kind of against it, I do in a way miss the social structure of having friends that are always there and that sort of thing, that I can always rely on, that are always there, that I can have, like I can play a split screen video game with, or stuff like that, that I kind of had before we left, but not really. I only ever had one good friend and then one okay, not so good friend. So yeah, that was kind of, that's number one. Number two is a toaster. You guys don't know how much you are underappreciating a toaster. Toasting things is just, it's beautiful. Yeah. The whole of West Africa, we didn't have toast. In Europe, we didn't have toast and all of that. And being able to have toast is amazing.
It's a privilege.
Number three, I would have to say, is the normality of being in a house. It's the thing that people take for granted the most, but there's aspects to it besides all of the awful things that are included with it. But it's just having a secure home, having all of that there readily available, and not having to move. I'm nomadic by nature now because of all these travels, but I can see the appeal to settling down in one place and being there forever. If you like the place, then there's no reason to leave, right? So that would definitely be my third. And those are my top three.
My top three, I think definitely the social parts, like having friends and stuff. I agree with that, because it is nice to have friends and you can just hang out with them and talk about whatever. And I think my second thing, privacy. Definitely privacy, because when you travel in a car, you do not get much privacy. You have to share a room. You have to share everything, basically. And,
well it depends on the way you travel, but yeah. In our case,
for us, we have to share, but it's nice to have like your own room and just have your own bed and not. It's great, and I miss the privacy. Like, another thing is going to the bathroom, because there's not much privacy, like I've said.
Yeah.
And then my third thing, I think definitely the toaster. The toaster is just amazing. It's like one of the greatest mankind inventions ever.
What do you think of the new Defender?
I like it. I think design's good. My least favourite part about it would be the back's design. The big wheel and the lights, the interior's nice, and it's got the third seat in the front, but I think it is only available as an automatic. It can wade through 900 millilitres of water. It's got terrain response too, and I've seen the videos of it testing, and it can go up hills and down hills very well. I don't know how steep those hills are, but it can go up. I've spec'd out hundreds. And so the best one I think I've done is the one I did, I think it was on launch night. Venture one, but then I took the Adventure one, then took away some things and added others. Colour was a greeny colour with black checker plates, white steel wheels. It was a 110, no rear windows, but it did have back doors, and it had some of the storage things on the side, and I think it might have also had a winch. But if I'd wanted it, it would have been something like 52,995.
We have seen it. I personally think it's amazing. Well, the colors do fit well with the vehicle, but what I like the most is that it can go on very rocky or just odd terrain and yet still be perfectly conditioned on the road too.
Well, the reason why I like the Land Rovers better than the cars is they have heated seats.
I kind of dislike it because it's leaning more towards the Discovery than it is to the Defender. And I realized that they changed it for a new time. I haven't seen how it performs off-road. I can imagine it's pretty good. I love the way that the series look, and I love the way that the Defenders, the old ones, the actual Defenders look. For me to see that and to basically see a Discovery with a bunch of ECUs in it, it's just not appealing to me personally. I actually know quite a few people that find the new Defender appealing, but for me personally, it's not my cup of tea.
What do you think of the Defender 90?
I think it looks more like a Defender than the 110. You can get a 6-seater one, can do the same things as the 110, but it's just a lot smaller. Well, it's still a Land Rover. It can do the same things. It can still go off-road very well, even though most people won't use that. It's got a bit more class and a bigger price tag.
What's the Toylander about?
Well, we've won quite a few awards with it. It's a Toylander, and it's white, decorated with police. It has working lights, working siren, working horn. It's got a speedometer, about 4 seats, because you can fit 2 in the back and 2 in the front. It's got a working tailgate, a fold-down screen. The workings are all under the bonnet. It's got working indicators. I think the only thing it doesn't have is brake lights. The original number plate on Huey was HUE 166, and my brother Hugh was named after that. His name, though, isn't Huey, it's Hugh, spelled HUW. So when we put it on our Toylander, we put it to HUW 166.
Do you have any of your own, aside from Toylander, do you have any of your own Land Rovers? Maybe you have a Matchbox collection.
I've got quite a lot of the old models. I'm getting a collection of the Range Rover Special Edition with that raised roof that they did for the police that had the lights. I've got 2 of them. I think there's 4 of them. And if I see them at shows, and I'll try and get them.
How many do you have?
Hundreds.
That's a lot. Do you have any of the Brundars, the larger toy cars?
I've got 3 Brooders, and I think I've got one other big vehicle that's about nearly as big as the Brooder, but I don't know what company that is.
What would you like from Santa?
I want the big new Lego Technic Land Rover Defender model.
I don't really need anything. That's the thing. I'm pretty content with what I have. I would like things like a new laptop, since I spilled salad dressing on mine and in Cameroon, and like half of the keys don't work anymore, and it really sucks because the word H, the letter H and G don't work, so I can't even type a full sentence with that. When it comes down to what I really want, it's nothing. I'm pretty content with what I have, and I realize if I get anything else, it's just going to be difficult to fit in the landy, and if I get one thing, I'll have to get rid of something else.
My parents have already told me that I'm going to be getting my mom's Discovery too, which is blue. Yeah, it has heated seats in the front, so I can't complain. I would like it to be a Range Rover Sport that is a maroon red.
I think for my motorized sister to finally be ready to go on the road again and just have no problems, because I think that's definitely my top thing on my list. I definitely need a new phone because it's really old. 5 years old, basically. It's getting slow, and I think it would also be helpful for my parents as well, for navigating and stuff. I don't really know what else I would want for Christmas this year, because when you're younger, there's just so many things you want, toys, blah blah blah. But as you get older, you're like, oh, what do I want? What do I need? More likely, because when you're younger, you're like, oh, I don't care, I want this and that, and blah blah blah. Myself, I would like to get more motivation to do my schooling, because I'm Santa, if you're listening to this, please give me some motivation.
I do believe the podcast reaches the North Pole.
That's the 81st edition of Centresteer Podcast. In producing the show, we forgot to record a closing. This is our longest show, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll try to keep the closing short. I had planned to release the show in time for Christmas, but editing Rover Kids was more challenging than I had expected. That's no reflection on the kids, it's just my overconfidence in my abilities. The change of the calendar year can cause one to reflect. Making the podcast can be challenging, stressful, and thankless, but I still enjoy it. I think it's all right, especially for a hand-built production. I think that makes us the series defender of podcasting. Thanks to Jeff Aronson, editor of Rovers Magazine, Pax for his continued production assistance, to all the Rover kids and their parents for talking with us. I hope you enjoy the Centresteer Podcast as much as we like making it. We do love to hear from you and what you're up to in your Land Rover. Until next time, I ask you to share the show with one other Land Rover enthusiast. You may now resume your important things.
As you should. They're awesome.
They are awesome.